words of that person from the outside begin to travel on their alpha and beta waves, and then begins to say, well, this is not a big deal. They begin to have justifications. Next thing you know, this, oh, I'm always with you. No, let me stop sitting here doing nothing. Now let me join you in this hookah smoking. Right? Let me join you in that. Everybody's doing it. This is what we do on Friday night to get together, and I don't want to be left alone in the dorm or, in my home by myself. Subhanallah. And that could lead to more things. It could lead to other things. Now we're smoking hookah together. Now we have joint gatherings, we have mixed gatherings of hookah smoking. So now we're on social dating, right? And so forth and so forth and so forth. As opposed to if you have a good companion, someone says, I'm going to this Celebrate Mercy event. Come with me, right? I'm going to learn hadith of the Prophet, come with me. Actually, I can think about in a personal time in my life, subhanAllah, I had one of my closest friends called me to a class. She was like, there's this sister, mashallah, I heard about her, there's the sheikha, and she's teaching this, and she's giving a class, and I heard it's really good, come with me. So I was like, you keep mentioning this sister, like, normally we would do something on Sunday, and she was like, I can't do this, this thing that we do every Sunday. It was actually a youth group. She was like, because I need to attend this class. I need to go to this sheikha's class. Literally, I was like, okay, khalas, I'm good. If it keeps you from this youth group, it must be something. So I need to go. So I went with her to the sheikha's class. It literally changed my life. That sheikha actually is how I ended up studying in Egypt, how I ended up meeting the Habayat, how I ended up studying in Talim. So how what one friend's invitation can guide you toward. Could either be your pathway toward Jannah, or this person's company could be your pathway toward hellfire. So we have to be very careful, of course, about the suhbah we keep, about our companionship. As it's mentioned, that this could be something where even someone who has good manners in this perfume that's mentioned, that part of the perfume or the adornment of a particular person is about their good characteristics, their good manners. I remember I had this one particular teacher, and she didn't speak English very well, and she was from Tajikistan. And Allah bless her, I remember I can't even remember much about our conversations because I didn't speak her language very well and she didn't speak mine very well. But I used to like to sit in her company because she had such excellent mannerisms. And so by sitting in with her company, when I would just go hang out with her, I would just make dua while I was in her company. Ya Rabbi, bless me to have some of her mannerisms. Bless me to take on some of her characteristics and her qualifications. Because sitting with her reminded me, actually by seeing the beauty of her, reminded me of somewhat even my own defects. Right? In my speech or in my mannerisms in particular gatherings. So by even just witnessing her, then it called me to be better and to be more mindful of my own behavior. Allahumma salli wa sallam ala Sayyidina Muhammad. So this is, ala din al-Khalil, that you have this opportunity. Then I remember, just to tell another story about myself, is that, subhanAllah, I knew that I wasn't one of the best students. Like, there were other students who were much further along than me, right? There were some students who were just like, mashallah, they had been there much longer. They had been there for years. So I made it part of my intention that I would befriend my teachers. So that as a result, I could sit in their homes, right? I could sit in their homes and visit them. So even when they weren't necessarily teaching, I could just learn from being in their company. I could learn from them, even just in conversations that they were having, that I would begin to hear narrations, or I would begin to learn even certain qualities or characteristics or things that you would do at certain times of the day, like what you would do at Maghrib. That this is something, and then I would find when I made a teacher, a friend of my teacher, she would take us to her teacher's house. So as a result, then going to her teacher's house, now I'm able to be in the company and the companionship of some of the higher teachers that had I not made the intention to be her friend, I would have never had the opportunity to be in that company. And honestly, it's in some of those circles and those private circles that I begin to see knowledge implemented in their behavior. So one, it becomes a moment of reminder for me, a great reflection as the believer is a mirror to a believer. So by being able to shine my reflection in their mirror, I begin to see my own defects, my own ignorance, and my own lack. But then I begin to see what are the beauties that I should be working to aspire towards. So it's very important to have good company, as opposed to when you have bad company, you look good, right? I'm in a good state, I'm in a good position. So then one doesn't aspire to become better, one doesn't aspire to change. In reality, when you have bad company, bad suhbah, and you're looking and say, well, I look great in comparison to that. I'm looking a little too religious, I'm looking a little too serious, I'm looking a little too committed. So let me just relax things a little bit. And that's where it becomes very dangerous. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us to have excellent company.
Just a side note that we will be returning to Hadith 7 for those who are wondering after this, inshallah.
I didn't hear the answer.
Oh, it's just I'm way long.
I didn't
And then we're going to go back to you.
I didn't know what you said.
ولا الهلسنة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وبعد. MashaAllah, I am honored to be joined on stage by my dear beloved brother, teacher, friend, Sheikh Hisham Mahmoud, rounding out this star-studded cast on this side of the stage, MashaAllah. This hadith is about friendship. And one of the most interesting things about the Prophet ﷺ is that his followers are distinguished in being referred to as ashab, companions. The followers of Jesus, alayhi salam, we call them hawariyun, disciples. This term also refers to the fact that they wear white clothes, hawari. The followers of Moses, Bani Israel, we say atba', followers. But only the followers of the Prophet ﷺ have the distinction of being referred to as companions. Radiallahu anhum. Man, you making this thing look too good, man. You know, at first I was ignoring him, but when he started really walking, I said, he's really getting into this. Let me get some of that. Let me put this right on me.
I was hot. I started, let me put my ear. What's the
At first I was thinking it looked too good, you know, but the perfume seller, like just get some on me. The companions of the Prophet ﷺ, this suhbah is indicated even in how we refer to them. And when you read about how they interacted and how they engaged, they were so close to one another. In fact, as an American man, you hear about some of the bodily intimacy of the Prophet ﷺ with some of the companions, and it makes me uncomfortable. They're in Ghar Thawr, and the Prophet ﷺ is resting his head in the lap of Abu Bakr. I'm like, yo, I'm not ready for the sunnah. Not that much of the sunnah, you know. Or holding hands. No, holding hands. The way that they would embrace each other, they were very close. So much so that when the Prophet ﷺ, and we know this if we read the Asbab al-Nuzul of Surah Al-Hujurat, the Prophet ﷺ got married, and the Imam recited this for Maghrib last night. And he invited people to his walima. And back then, the wala'im were very simple. You know, some bread, some idam, you know, bread, condiments, milk, dates. The wala'im didn't cost like 40K. Simple walima at the house of the Prophet ﷺ. And people are there with the Prophet, enjoying his company, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The ultimate perfume seller, right? The nafahat, just these breaths of mercy, entering them just from being in the company of the Prophet alaihi wasallam. And they're hanging out. And it's starting to get late. And I don't know about you, but when somebody is at my house and they're overstaying their welcome, I start dropping not so subtle hints. Maybe I go and cut the lights out in other rooms. I very conspicuously say to my wife, baby, can you please put a kettle of tea on? Well, babe, you don't even drink tea. My brother is an impassioned storyteller. So we got to keep this going. Maybe I started the conversation in my jacket and my tie. I go upstairs, I come back down, I have on my PJs. With cap to boot. So you got the full PJs. Listen. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he's not giving them the slightest hint or suggestion that their presence is annoying to him. This is the messenger of God. A willingness to endure the inconvenience of his companions. This is why we say sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Always putting the needs of the other before himself. This is friendship. So much so that the next day, they stayed all the way until the time of Subh, until the time of Fajr. The next day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down wahi. فَإِذَا تَعِمْتُمْ فَانْتَشِرُوا. After you've taken a meal and after you've eaten with the Prophet, ﷺ, get out. Don't stay. It annoys the Prophet, ﷺ. He's shy to tell you the truth, but Allah is not shy to tell you the truth. The Prophet ﷺ knew how to be a friend. And in our community, there is a crisis of friendship. A lot of young Muslims are just lonely, man. And cyber friendship is no iwad, is no replacement. Cyber friendship is no replacement for real physical co-presence. To be in someone's company. We need this in our community. And when you are in the company of a person of good character, that character rubs off on you. And the opposite is also true. Inevitably, there's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in the Sahih. Whenever you think about association, think about this hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said that when people get together and they assemble, remembering Allah, the angels descend upon that gathering. And then they go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, reporting what they found of the actions of those people. And Allah asks them, even though He knows better than them, but this is simply for illustration. What are they saying? And the angels say, they're saying Subhanallah. They're saying Alhamdulillah. They're saying La ilaha illallah. And then Allah asks them, what do they want? They want your rida, they want your pleasure, and they want your Jannah, your paradise. And Allah says, have they ever seen my paradise? And the angels say, no. What then for their show? How intense would their desire for my paradise be if they had witnessed it? And Allah asks, what are they seeking refuge from? From your punishment, from your displeasure. Have they ever seen Jahannam? No. How intense would their aversion to Jahannam be if they had seen it? And then Allah Ta'ala says, write forgiveness for all of them. All of them. May Allah make this one such gathering. And then as the angels are recording these ujur, these rewards, they said, Ya Rabbal Alameen, There's one person, جاء لقضاء الحاجة. He just came to fulfill some need. Meaning, his intent in being there is not like everyone else's. He really didn't come to remember Allah. It's like the person that, goes to the masjid just because there's someone down there that owes me money. It's like, I'm going to the masjid for Salat al-Isha. You never go to the masjid for Salat al-Isha. Well, Hisham is probably going to go to the masjid for Salat al-Isha, and he owes me $200. Somebody who's not there for a wholesome reason. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Hum qawmun la yashqa jalisuhum. They're a people. Even the person loosely affiliated with them, just sitting with them, will never be disappointed. This is what we call collateral beauty. You've heard of collateral damage. That person who wasn't even there to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala benefited just from his proximity to the people that were remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for someone like me, this means that just by befriending people like Hisham and Sheikh Aisha, I benefit from that. Even if I know I'm not really from them, I'm friends with them. Remember the importance of friendship. One of our teachers said, that which we don't attain through talab, right, through seeking, we attain through adab. Just being in the company of good people, serving them when necessary, enjoying their company, this is who we are. And a funny story about friendship, and I'll conclude with this, inshallah. In Chicago, we have the great pleasure of having one of the hidden gems of the American Muslim community. There's a man named Sheikh Muhammad Imam. No one knows him. And he's an Azhari min Ayam al-Azhar. A real Azhari, not an Azhari Muzawwar like me. Like a counterfeit Azhari. He's a real Azhari. And he only speaks Arabic. He does not speak English. And I used to read with him Arabic poetry, Arabic literature, and Fath al-Bari 4 times a week for about a year and a half. Right before I went to Azhar, before I went to Cairo. And one day, I had just returned from Yemen. I just returned from Tahrir. I'm sitting in Sheikh Muhammad's office. And Sheikh Muhammad lives at the Masjid. Right? He goes back to Alexandria for maybe 2 months out of every year, spends time with his family, and then he comes back and lives at the Masjid on the southwest side of Chicago, in a little compartment about as big as this stage. His bed is there, his books are there, that's his life. And we're sitting in his office, and one of my friends that hadn't seen me in a very long time peeked into the office, and he's like, "Hey, what's up, and I'm trying to hint to him that I'm sitting with the sheikh, and I'm trying to sit, and I'm like, "Sheikh, I'm studying, I'll get with you in a minute." But he wasn't picking up any of my isharat. إِنَّ اللَّبِيبَ مِنَ الْإِشَارَاتِ يَفْهَمُ. An intelligent person picks up indication. But I'm not saying that about my man, though. I'm telling him, "What the sheikh? I get with you in a minute. What the sheikh?" But he's not picking up. He's like, then finally, he just says audibly, "Obey Allah. I ain't seen you in a long time. I need to talk to you, man." So I said to Sheikh Muhammad, I apologize about this disturbance. And he said, "Iz'aj? Disturbance? هذه محبة. This is love. This is ukhuwah. This is brotherhood. What should we make of our majalis if they don't have a space for love? What majlis is any good if it doesn't have a space for love?" He said, "Go, talk to the brother. We'll study after you come back." So I talked to my friend about 5 or 10 minutes, caught up with him, came back, right back into the nas with the sheikh, back into the text. And I was thinking to myself, what an understanding man. from a completely different cultural experience, older than me. What an understanding man. And then 5 minutes later, an Egyptian came by the office and said, Sheikh Muhammad, I think the Shufa. And I was like, maybe he ain't that much different than me. He looked at me and said, see, Muhammad. And then he went and he talked to the brother. My point is, friendship is very, very important. And we have to make sure that our community is a place that we can cultivate real, authentic, thoroughgoing friendship. وصدق رسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى من والاه. My name is Hisham Mahmoud, and I am on the dean of Omar Ewing. My name is Hisham Mahmoud, and Michael Fleming is on my dean. When I got to Howard University, the last thing on my mind was 5 prayers a day and Ramadan. For 3 years before that in high school, I had abandoned prayer. And my father would ask me, isn't it time to pray now? As he was about to pray Zuhr or Asr. So I get up and pray with him without wudu, but just to satiate, his desire to see me pray. He had raised me to pray. But when I got there, for the first 2 or 3 months that I was there, with my first taste of independence on a university campus, I was basically caught in the mix. And my roommates had more an effect on me than anybody else. And you can imagine, as freshmen at an HBCU like Howard University, right?
Oh boy.
You can imagine what we were doing after class and, when the sun goes down. So one day Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it in my heart to seek out Salat al-Jum'ah. I hadn't heard of khutbah for a good long time. So I went to Salat al-Jum'ah and I saw a flyer. I followed the flyer, right? You know what am I doing? Michael Fleming. That's where I met Aisha. I've known her for about 26 years now. I'm sorry. I revealed my age, not her. My age. That's my age. That's not her age. That's my age. Allah give us wisdom. So when I got to Jummah, after the Salah, a brother from Trinidad, Omar Ewing, came up to me and he said, how you doing? What's your name? And so we ended up walking from the Blackburn Center all the way to the Rice House, right? And he had his hand on my shoulder like this the entire way. It's about a third of a mile. You're walking about a third of a mile, maybe a fourth of a mile, right? The whole time he had his hand around me like this as we were walking to the Rice House. Little did he know that as he put his hand on my shoulder that whole time, he actually put his hand right around my heart. And until now, he pretty much owns me. Omar Ewing, I will do anything for that man, because I am on his team. And within a couple months, I started sporting a kufi, growing a beard. My life had changed. And a man came to sit right next to me at the Blackburn Center. Again, they had a cafeteria there. And I was eating dinner there, alone on a table where nobody else was around. But Michael Fleming came and he sat right next to me. And that began another friendship. A year later, he became my roommate and had declared his Shahada. Because when I got to Howard, I was called, right? And I was not a caller. But after meeting Omar Ewing, I became a caller, and I was no longer called. And I can tell you about the benefit of good suhbah, because everything I'm doing today Omar Ewing gets the lion's share of that if it's good. He gets the lion's share of it. And everything that Michael Fleming invests into his Muslim children, I get some of that. Inshallah. So the message is very simple. If you want to become a better basketball player, you got to play with the pros. You know, you're in high school, you got to play with the college kids, right? You're in middle school, you got to play with the high schoolers, or else your game is not going to improve, right? And that's the thing. And this is for people, teenagers growing up, right? And parents who are worried about their young children who might not be on the path, right? Well, Al-Mar'u ala dini khalili, the Prophet ﷺ said, the person will follow the way of his closest companions. And he said, اختر الصديق قبل الطريق. He said, choose the friend before you choose the path. Because basically your path is the path of your friend. Right? Whatever path your friend is on, that becomes your path. And so it behooves us then to take account of the people we have in our immediate vicinity and who we allow to call us. And to what do they call us? We seek to perfect ourselves. The soul yearns to perfect itself. And one of the best ways to do so is to be in the company of those who have perfected souls. Right? And if not, then we become stagnant and we don't progress in our own paths because the people around us have not encouraged us to do so. It's really that simple. Birds of a feather flock together. And no one can do this on their own. The Prophet ﷺ said that my ummah is like a flock of sheep and I am its shepherd. And if one of them leaves the flock, they become vulnerable to the wolves and they will not have my protection. But if they stay with the flock, then they shall have my protection. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And so I remember growing up in the living rooms of my neighbors. I remember that. I remember having best friends. You can actually ask them, you can actually ask me when I was in middle school or in high school, who's your best friend? And I'd have somebody to point to. But something happens after college where we no longer have a best friend. You know, who's your best friend? Oh, you're an exception to every rule then. Even that one. Okay? Alhamdulillah. But seriously, I mean, if we ask who are your best friends, right? That same best friend relationship that we had growing up, that is no longer the case because there's been a number done to us by anti-social media that we have yet to even fathom the ramifications of it, right? And we are not connected to one another anymore. We don't have suhbah. We have Jum'ah. And after Jum'ah, it's, like this very uncomfortable little kiss on three different sides, which Allah bless Imam Malik. He did not even like that men shake hands, let alone kiss on three sides and all of that. It is makruh. It's makruh in the Maliki madhab to actually shake hands, unless you're coming back from travel or something like that, right? But this is our where we want to be. So the best thing to do is to identify who are my friends in this life, who are my companions. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Who are those who are going to advise me to truth and advise me with patience? Who are they? Can I point them out? Who are those? Who are my go-to people in life? So that I have this friendship that is going to be a support for me on my path toward Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because either we have the wrong friends or we have no friends if we don't have the right friends. And without friends, without people in our lives, without companions, then we're left to our own devices and we're only going to go so far along our own path. We're stifling ourselves in the end. And so what we have to realize is that our success depends on the people that we invite into our lives, because we are constantly between being influenced and influencing others. And so if I want the best influences on me so that I can become the best version of myself, I have to look toward those whose call is stronger than mine. And if I want to influence the lives of others, then that is my relationship with them, right? But there are people in my life who I know, when I'm in their presence, I am still being called. I am still being called. And those people are closer to me than anybody, because those are the same people who are going to bury me when I die, and who are going to pray for me after I'm dead. They're going to remember me. And it's through their prayers that my deeds actually increase with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that their prayers become my deeds long after I'm gone. So look for good friends, good companions. The Prophet ﷺ enjoined us to do so. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةٌ. The believers are nothing but brothers, right? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
We wanted to give some time to Q&A, not just for this hadith, but the preceding ones. There were the ones about modesty and not cutting off relations, and others before this. So we have about 10 minutes we can give to that, inshallah. If there was that, whether it's on this hadith or previous ones, did anyone have questions they wanted to bring up?
I have a question. The AC was turned on last night. Who turned it off today?
So the question that I asked earlier was, sorry, how do we balance family relationships, and a little bit on what was asked earlier, because we keep saying that your guy is wrong, and we need to stay away, and we don't talk about things, but we do have to talk about certain things. So what are some of the principles? We're having a conversation about family, about social challenges that we must have, where specific names, whether named or not, for people need to be discussed, because the circumstances call for it. What are some of the principles that we need to abide by, and to have conversations of that type without getting into the challenges of riba and backbiting and all of that, because certain things need to be discussed. So either contexts or principles that we can follow.
I think you mentioned mostly the answers in the question in terms of discussing certain principles, right? Meaning that if, for example, as a family, if there's certain things that we need to discuss, the first thing is to focus so much on the principle, what is it, or the behavior, to address the behavior, as opposed to necessarily the people. And you're right in terms of the fact that sometimes it's just an inevitable, like if we're bringing this up, but I think it's very important that even if those people come up, that we look to what Sheikh Ubaidullah said in terms of that we don't attack that person's character or attack their internal state or the entirety of their person, as opposed to we only keep it to the behavior, right? So that in this case, what we're addressing is the behavior of such and such, and then we're addressing what is the principle that is connected to it, and specifically what is the prophetic principle that is connected to it, and for then how are we going to address that as a family, right? Because you're right, things, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. There are a number of things I think that families aren't discussing, and they are getting dismissed. And so it does become important to be able to bring up those topics and to be able to discuss them in a healthy way. So the first thing is, just to do a quick recap, number one, keep it to prophetic principles and not individuals, and not someone's, when we're talking about certain behavior, and not someone's character, or definitely not their intent. Of course, be very careful about not only our intention in addressing a certain thing, but our attention for how we are addressing that thing. And then what are the most in the case where argumentation comes in to the picture, and we recognize we're at a standstill and we're not going to be able to solve this in a healthy way, egos are involved, emotions are high, then it may become not only to take a time out, but it may also be necessary to involve the third person, an arbitrator, who has that skill and that quality, right? And it's important to say someone who has that skill and that ability, because sometimes we involve, let's say for example, the imam of a masjid, or we involve a third person. We say, Grandma, come in and navigate, Grandma, come into this conversation, what's your opinion on this? And part of bringing in, Grandma to the conversation is she's going to be on my side because Grandma loves me, right? Not necessarily that she's going to be, she's not necessarily going to be an objective, an objective arbitrator in this particular situation, nor may the imam, maybe even, or another person that's called into that conversation is not necessarily skilled. They haven't been trained in the skills that are necessary in order to address the particular issue at hand. So, principles, prophetic principles, not character, doing our best to stick to that instead of focusing on the individuals. How does it directly affect us as a family? How are we handling it? And when, avoiding argumentation, and then when necessary, call in skilled arbitration.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulih al-karim wa ba'd. I think in this matter, it's important to recognize that sin in this matter is categorized in two ways. You have some sins that only hurt the individuals committing them. So if a person is drinking or abusing drugs or some other sin that only entails harm to themselves, this is when we cover the person, right? We cover their uyub, right? We give them the sitr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by not exposing them. And this is where the hadith min husni Islam al-mar'i tarakuhu ma la ya'ni, from the beauty of a person's Islam is leaving that which does not concern them. But then you have sins that entail the harm of another person. These sins we're actually responsible for talking about, in as much as we're trying to prevent harm from coming to someone else. There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in the Sahih, in which a woman came to him and she informed him about two suitors, two men seeking her hand in marriage. And the Prophet ﷺ said without apology, as for this one, he's broke. He doesn't have any money. Even if he appears to have money, he really doesn't. As for this one, he's not a gentleman. He's a heavy-handed man. He does not treat women with kindness. Now this wasn't backbiting, because she asked a question, and the Prophet ﷺ is tasked with giving an earnest answer. Extrapolating from that narration of the Prophet ﷺ, if we're talking about something that is about preventing harm from coming to members of our family. So if I have to tell you when your cousin comes over, keep an eye on your cousin, and you might want to put away your valuables because he's addicted to drugs and he steals. Or even if I just said, keep an eye on your valuables because he's known to become attached to things that are not exactly his. Attached. This is me trying to prevent, I'm not trying to expose, my nephew, but I'm telling my daughter, he does have a tendency to forget to return the things that he borrows when he's visiting relatives' homes. Right? Hukm al-rida. He takes it believing that it's okay. but he applies the hukam very generously. However I'm turning it, it is to prevent harm, not to expose. That's different. The second thing that I want to say about this is we have to have emotional intelligence. Someone needs to, I keep saying, somebody needs to write about this. Probably means I should be doing some writing. But the emotional intelligence of the Prophet ﷺ. If someone is coming to you and they're complaining about something and it does involve someone else, to my mind, I need to check with some muhakkikun, scholars of the highest caliber. This is not the same thing as backbiting. So when Sayyidina Ali was about to get married to Fatima, and he had a camel that he was giving as a mahar, and Hamza, while intoxicated, quarreled with Sayyidina Ali and then killed the camel. Ali came and told the Prophet ﷺ what happened. He didn't conceal the identity of Hamza and say, well, somebody killed my camel that I was going to give as a marital gift. And he said, Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib killed my camel, and you need to talk to him about it. Because the Prophet ﷺ must know what happened so that he can intervene. But Sayyidina Ali's not telling everybody else. He's not posting it on Facebook. He's not broadcasting it. He's talking to someone who he knows can arbitrate, can mediate, can assist us in coming to terms about the situation. So when we are forced to escalate or raise an issue with someone that we have deep bonds of affection with, but escalating the issue or raising the issue does entail informing someone else. We have to be emotionally intelligent if we're that person being informed. Like, okay, you're not, I don't have to, don't backbite. I realize you're coming to me, telling me this because you think that I can intervene and do something. And it's interesting, when the Prophet ﷺ was sought, when his arbitration or mediation was sought, he never said to people, don't backbite, because he recognized what was happening. So may Allah give us the wisdom to understand the difference between those scenarios.
There was a written question passed up. Did you guys want to address that?
It's not really a bad question. One would think that someone was asking you a very, very
that was over dramatized. Okay, this is not. Can I really talk? No. She's still mad at me for revealing my age. When we try to seek out people better than us, right? Like me seeking Aisha out. They have no incentive to befriend people below themselves and include them in their own companionship. How do we get around that dilemma, right? So it's a very interesting question. We can approach this question from various, various different angles. I think I'll just choose one right now, especially in the interest of time. And that is the perception of someone as better than us, right? And as us as lower than them. One, we should take a step back and say that that is a self-projection, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the truth of where everyone is, right? And if you have attempted to share the company of someone whom you perceive to be a little further along the path than you are, and they show no interest in sharing, in spending time with you. They show no interest. One, we should know that perhaps it's because they're just too busy. We give them excuses, right? Or perhaps it's just because they might be facing some dilemma in their lives that's very difficult to actually get through, right? That's one of the 70 excuses that we give to them. But if it becomes clear that they actually don't want to spend time with us because they actually don't want to, be in the company of someone whom they perceive as a sinner, right? Well, that's a big problem. Not for you, but for them. Right? Not for you, but for them. Because, our saviors, our teachers, they teach, right, that I'll give you one anecdote, that on one occasion there was a saint who was walking down the road, right? He was walking down the road, and there was a sinner who was walking across, right? So they crossed paths. And at the point where they crossed paths, the saint turned away not to look at the sinner. He couldn't bear looking at the sinner. And the sinner turned away because he couldn't bear looking at the saint. You guys understand? The saint turned away because, and the sinner turned away because he just didn't think that he was, he didn't want to, who was he to look upon the face of a saint? At the point where they crossed paths, the saint became the sinner and the sinner became the saint.
Oh.
You guys see what I'm saying? Right? So, ultimately, Allah is our judge. And we do the best that we can do to take all of the means to draw closer to Allah. One of those means is to be in the company of those who are close to Allah. But ultimately, whether or not they are close to Allah is in the knowledge of Allah. And it is our perception, right, that may or may not be accurate, right? And so if you've gotten the feeling that so-and-so doesn't want to spend time with me because he thinks I'm worthless, or he thinks I'm, beneath him, right? If that, and if you've reached a certain degree of confidence in that interpretation, then know and rejoice in Allah's recording your name in the angelic realm, right? In the angelic realm. Because it just may be that brokenness that you feel in the presence of Allah is exactly your doorway back to Allah. That brokenness that we feel, that feeling of I have transgressed upon myself and I have betrayed my trust to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? That brokenness that you might feel in that moment. And it's irrelevant. It has nothing to do with whether or not someone has accepted you into their inner circle or not. And keep it moving. If that door is closed, then look for someone else who truly, right, who truly is a little bit further along the path than so-and-so. Because it just may be that if so-and-so looked upon you in contempt, that your rank, that whatever you thought his rank was or her rank was, becomes your rank. And whatever you thought your rank was becomes his rank. And in the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is the one who moves us through stages. Right? So I don't know if that makes sense or if that helps in any way. But do not be disheartened. Right? Do not be disheartened. And do not recoil back into loneliness. Right? Good companions are out there. And we need one another. The human being is a social creature. Right? And so people need people. Right? People need people. Right? And you will find those souls who, in the barzakh, before we even came into this world, you were making tawaf around them. You will find them. And the souls who were making tawaf around you shall find you. Because every one of us is called and every one of us calls. Right? And so you will find those people whom you were called unto. And you will find those people whom you are meant to call. Inshallah.
I wanted to address that question just from this aspect, and that is pray for your teachers. Pray for them. You know, for two reasons. One, pray that their states only elevate, that their virtues, what you perceive about their virtues, that they attain those virtues bil haqiqa, and in reality. The other thing is that sometimes it may appear, as Chef Hisham mentioned, it may appear that they don't, want to be bothered with you, or, but it may not be, necessarily from the position that they're looking down on you or think that you're lower or less than them. In reality, it may be just that busy with family, busy with, all the things that they are involved with, subhanAllah. And then I also want to say sometimes there is a perception that I can't approach them because they're either so lofty, right? Or I can't approach them because they're so, they're up there and I'm down here. And that perception, I know personally, for many teachers, can actually lead to their teachers being lonely, because no one actually ever approaches them from a position of friendship. They're just like, well, they must be too busy, or they're too high, or they're too knowledgeable, they're too this or too that. And so there are lots of teachers, subhanAllah, that, may be lonely. And so, seek refuge in Allah from shaitan, who likes to whisper all kind of foolishness. To keep us distant from each other. Because one thing that shaitan, he never rests until he's done two things. He separates the husband from the wife, or the student from the teacher.
MashaAllah. Sadaqt.
I mentioned barzakh, I meant alam al-dhar, right? Before we came into the world. The barzakh is after death, right? The alam al-dhar, right? The realm in which we were asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, am I not your Lord? And we all said, indeed you are, right? In that world where all of the souls met. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. عن عبد الله بن السلام قال إن الله عز وجل لما أراد هدى زيد بن سعية قال زيد ما من علامات النبوة شيء إلا وقد عرفته في وجهه سوى اثنتين لما أخبرهما منه يصدق حلمه جهل الجاهل ولا يزيد شدة الجهل عليه إلا حلما، فكنت أنطلق إليه لأخالطه وأعرف حلمه، فخرج يوما ومعه علي بن أبي طالب فجاءه رجل كالبدوي قال يا رسول الله إن قرية بني فلان أسلموا وحدثتهم أنهم إن أسلموا أتتهم أرزاقهم رغدا وقد أصابتهم سنة وشدة وإني مشفق عليهم أن يخرجوا من الإسلام فإن رأيت أن ترسل لهم بشيء يعينهم. قال زيد فقلت أنا أبتاع منكم بكذا وكذا وسقى، فأعطيته 80 دينارا فدفعها إلى الرجل وقال اعجل عليهم بها فأغنهم. فلما كان قبل المحل بيوم أو يومين أو ثلاثة خرج رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم إلى جنازة في نفر من أصحابه فجبلت رداءه جبلة شديدة حتى سقط عن عاتقه ثم أقبلت بوجه جهم غليظ فقلت ألا تقضيني يا محمد فوالله ما علمتكم بني عبد المطلب لمطل. فارتعدت فرائس عمر بن الخطاب كالفلك المستدير أو كالفلك المستدير ثم رمى ببصره فقال أي عدو الله أتقول هذا لرسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وتصنع به ما أرى وتقول ما أسمع هو الذي بعثه بالحق لولا ما أخاف فوته لسبقني رأسك. ورسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ينظر إلى عمر في تؤدة وسكون ثم تبسم وقال أنا وهو أحوج إلى غير هذا أن تأمر بحسن الأداء وتأمره بحسن اتباع. اذهب يا عمر فاقضه حقه وزده 20 صاعا من تمر. فقلت ما هذا؟ قال أمرني رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أن أزيدك مكان منازعتك. فقلت أتعرفني يا عمر؟ قال لا. فمن أنت؟ قلت أنا زيد بن سعية. قال الحبر؟ قلت الحبر. قال فما دعاك أن تفعل برسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ما فعلت وتقول له ما قلت؟ قلت يا عمر إنه لم يبقى من علامات النبوة شيء إلا وقد عرفته في وجه رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حين نظرت إليه إلا اثنتين لم أخبرهما منه يسبق حلمه جهله ولا يزيد شدة الجهل عليه إلا حلما. فقد اختبرته منه فأشهدك يا عمر أني رضيت بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد نبيا وأشهدك أن شطر مالي لله فإني أكثرها مالا صدقة على أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. فقال عمر أو على بعضهم فإنك لا تسعهم كلهم. قلت أو على بعضهم. قال فرجع عمر وزيد بن سعية إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فقال زيد أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله فآمن به وصدقه وبايعه وشهد معه مشاهد كثيرة.
Abdullah bin Salam radiallahu anhu said, when Allah wanted to guide Zayd bin Sa'ya, Zayd said, I beheld in his face every prophecy related to him, to the Prophet ﷺ, except for 2 prophecies about which I had yet to try him, namely that his forbearance surpasses the unbridled anger of the irate or the very angry, and the more such anger against him intensifies, the more his forbearance deepens. So I used to go out with him to engage him and apprise myself or test out his forbearance. Then one day he went out, Sallallahu went out with Ali ibn Abi Talib, and a Bedouin-like man approached him and said, Messenger of Allah, such and such village entered Islam, and I promised them that if they were to do so, their sustenance would come to them plentiful. And they have been afflicted with famine and are in dire straits, and I am disquieted lest they should leave Islam. So if you deem it right to send them some relief, I interrupted, I will loan you such and such camel loads, the equivalent of 80 dinars. And so he handed the money to the man, saying, rush to them with this and enrich them. And so a day or 2 or 3 before the debt was due, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ went out among a group of his companions in a funeral procession. So I yanked his shirt from behind with aggression, causing it to hang off of his shoulder. Then I faced him fiercely, boorishly, and said, won't you pay me back, Muhammad? By God, I didn't know that the clan of Abdul Muttalib was debt delinquent or late in returning their debts. And so a day or 2 or 3 before the debt was due, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ went out among a group of his companions. Thereupon, Umar ibn al-Khattab was overcome with rage after the man pulled the Prophet's shirt and addressed him in this way. He was overcome with rage, whose harshness was that of a rocky tract of land. And then he threw his glance at me and said, Enemy of Allah, do you thus or in this way address the Messenger of Allah? Are you actually doing what I see you doing? Are you actually saying what I hear you saying? I swear by the one who sent him with truth, had it not been for my fear of overstepping his authority, your head would have come off your body faster than my sword could cut through your neck. Meanwhile, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was watching Umar with deliberateness and composure. Then he ﷺ smiled and said, he and I are instead more in need of your commanding me to pay off my debts in a beautiful manner, and you're commanding him to follow up in a beautiful manner. Go then, Umar, and fulfill his rights, and increase him 20 sa'a, or 80 handfuls of dates. So I asked him, what is this? He answered, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ commanded me to increase you in response to your provocation. So I asked him, don't you know me, Umar? He answered, no, who are you? I said, Zayd ibn Sa'ya. He asked, the rabbi? I answered, yes, the rabbi. He asked, what then possessed you to do with the Messenger of Allah ﷺ what you did, and say to him what you said? I said, Omar, there was not a single prophecy left to ascertain or to test out in the face of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ when I beheld him, except two that I had yet to observe or test him with, that his forbearance or patience under extreme conditions surpasses the unbridled anger of the irate, and the more such anger against him intensifies, the more his forbearance deepens, or his hilm deepens. But now I have tested these in him, so I call you, Omar, to witness that I am content with Allah as my Lord, with Islam as my religion, and with Muhammad as my prophet. And I call you to witness that half of all I possess is now for Allah. I am the most wealthy of my tribe, and I give it as charity to the Ummah of Muhammad. Omar said, or to some of them, for you will not be able to spend it on all of them. So Omar then returned with Zayd bin Sa'ya to the Messenger of Allah, and Zayd declared, I bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah, and that Muhammad is his slave and messenger. And he believed in him, affirmed his truth, pledged his allegiance to him, and fought a great many battles with him.
I've got a story that I wanted to share with you as I comment on this hadith here. I was coming to Chicago, where my dearest friend and Sheikh Ubaidullah resides, and I was just getting off the plane. And I'm Egyptian, right? So basically, you know, whatever path is in front of me belongs to me, right? You know, like driving around, right? These are my streets. We just allowed you guys to share them, right? But as an Egyptian, right? We're all Egyptian here. And a lot of people here are Egyptian. You guys understand the reference that I'm making, right? Which is basically, you know, this is how we treat the path in front of us. And this is how I was walking in the airport, outside the airport. I was leaving the airport, walking in this way, zigzagging between the people, right? Trying to get to my destination all fast, right? Whatever. So on the way, and I've got my carry-on behind me, I'm zigzagging through, and apparently, and I didn't see her, there was a woman who was in a wheelchair, whom I had sort of gone right in front of, trying to get to the door. And the man to my left looks at me and starts yelling at me that you almost ran her over. It's a little bit exaggerated, right? But, you know, he was really belligerent with it though. And unfortunately, I was dressed as I'm dressed now, right? So obviously, this is on my prophet, this is on my religion, right? I'm the ambassador, right? This is how people, so he begins to just insult me and his voice starts to get really loud, right? And he's not letting it go. And the whole time, I've got this negative energy toward him that, okay, if you want this to escalate, you know, I didn't see the woman, and I definitely didn't run her over, right? She's in a wheelchair. How am I going to actually run her? So if you want this to escalate, it can easily go there. is my initial response to him. And then as we are crossing the street, as I cross the street, I leave him behind, and he's not letting it go. And he starts a conversation with a stranger right next to him, looking at me, pointing at me, talking about me, with a perfect stranger right next to him. You know, and what do you think that person had to say about Islam? What do you think that person had to say about the Muslim? What do you think that person had to say, right? So they're having this conversation, and this whole time I'm thinking, you know, we can do this. We can do this, right? If you want to do this, we can do this. He was a mighty man, right? And I had my mighty mouse shirt on, right? Here I come to save the day, right? Remember Mighty Mouse? So I had those feelings arising in my heart, and I kept looking at him and giving him this really, really evil stare, right? Just staring at him in a very, very, aggressive way. The whole time, it was staring him down, and then he started to provoke me. What? Come, and he starts to provoke me. I'm sorry about the length of this story. I wish I really had a 2-minute version of the story, but I decided to go back there. I crossed the street, head right back to him, and I walked right to his face. And he said, "What?" I extended my hand and I said, "Sir, I apologize for cutting you off when I walked in front of you, and I didn't even see the lady that you were talking to." And he responded saying, "That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. You, sir, are a man. You are a man." Okay? That was not the reaction. And I left his hand, walked right back across the street, and waited for my ride to come. Right? Now, would you describe what I did that day, right? What I did that day. Would you look upon Hisham Mahmoud and say, Hisham Mahmoud is a person who has good character? Right? I'm not talking about me, I'm just talking about that scenario. Would you say Hisham Mahmoud has good character? Yeah? Okay. Is there a difference between that? Is there a difference between... You got all the answers, man. You can't answer these questions. Is there a difference between that and between what we just read on the board today? And what is the difference?
There's a difference.
Oh yeah, there's a difference. What's the difference? What's the difference? Here is a man who comes to the Prophet ﷺ and says, "I will loan you the money." And he's testing something in the Prophet ﷺ. Testing something in him. What is he testing? He's testing him forbearance. And the more he's provoked, the more forbearing he becomes. And then they agree that, okay, you pay me back next Tuesday. So next Tuesday comes around. No, not Tuesday. It's Saturday. It's Saturday. And there's still Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So he comes on Saturday, and he comes to the Prophet ﷺ from behind, takes his shirt and yanks it down, such that there's red marks on the neck of the Prophet ﷺ from the front. And the Messenger ﷺ turns around to him, in another narration, he turns around to him smiling. That was his reaction. He turned around to this man smiling, saying, "Do you have a need?" And so this man says, and so that's the first provocation, right? That's the first provocation, and that's the first response. The response is forbearance. The second provocation now is that the more the anger intensifies, the deeper his forbearance becomes. The second provocation is that I never knew you sons of Abdul Muttalib were delinquent in paying back your debts. Now it's on the family. Now it's on the family. And if that was me, right? If that was me, I would say, what? It's not Tuesday. I still got 3 days on this debt. I still got 3 days on this debt. It's not Tuesday yet. Right? At the very least. And the Prophet ﷺ doesn't go there. He doesn't go there. He doesn't defend himself. He doesn't stoop down to that level. Right? But what happens? Sayyidina Umar who takes over the conversation, and he reacts with this with this anger, right? He reacted with this righteous anger for the Prophet ﷺ, saying, "O enemy of Allah, if it wasn't for the fact that I feared that I actually would transgress this man, his authority, transgress the authority of the Prophet ﷺ, your head would have been off your body quicker than my sword would have smitten through your neck. It would have fallen off your body." And so the Prophet ﷺ is listening to Umar, and then he tells Umar, tell Umar, I am in more need of something other than this from you. I am in need from you that you command me to pay back my debts in a beautiful way. And that you command him to follow up on those debts in a beautiful way. Okay, this is his spontaneous response. And this is why he is characterized with good character. Because good character, according to Imam Jurjani in his book Al-Tarifat, Kitab Al-Tarifat, he said character is hay'atun rasikhatun fi an-nas yasduru anha al-af'alu bisuhulatin wa rawiyya bisuhulatin min ghayri tafkirin wala rawiyya. That it is a disposition in the nafs. It is a disposition. It is a disposition in the nafs from which actions emanate with ease, without the need for thought or premeditation. And now do you see why? If going back to that question, now with that definition, could you have said that Hisham Mahmoud has good character the way he reacted to that man in Chicago? No. Why? Because there's all this premeditation. There's all this forethought. There's all this conversation that he's having with his nafs. Should I not? Dealing with all the feelings of anger and animosity and, yeah, we can do this. And he may have done the right thing at the end, but it took him a long time to get there. And you may say that a person who got there is on his way one day to having good character, but not until it emanates from him with ease. Not until it comes to the surface as spontaneous as is germane to his disposition. That this is who he is. This is who the Prophet ﷺ was. That you could not provoke this man. You could not provoke him. You could not. He didn't have any buttons to push. And a very, very important detail of this hadith is that why was the Prophet ﷺ out on that second time? Why did he go out with his companions that second day? What was he out there doing? He was going to the Baqiyah. This was in the middle of a janazah. This was in the middle of a funeral. The Prophet ﷺ was walking this soul to its final burial place, its abode. And the family of the people are there. The companions are all there. And this Jew comes up, this rabbi, who should have known better, according to Umar, he should have known better. He comes at a funeral, and he's provoking the Prophet ﷺ in the middle of a funeral. In the middle of a funeral. And the Prophet ﷺ turns and he responds with smiling to him. Smiling to him. And then disciplining Umar in the process. That you are Umar, right? And Umar, the Prophet ﷺ worked on Umar. He worked on him to cultivate his character. You are the one, out of all of these people, you are the one who is going to accompany him to Beit al-Mal, to bring this man the money that is owed to him. The Prophet ﷺ had Umar walk him in order to cultivate his character in the process, to get that under control, get that nafs under control, right? And so this is one of the greatest testimonies to the character of the Prophet ﷺ, who is able to take on the provocation of his people, right? And it's never personal with him. Sayyidina Ubaydullah mentioned that when they overstayed their welcome at his house, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that he was bashful, he was shy, he wouldn't tell you. Wallahu la yastahi min al-haq, but Allah is not bashful from telling you the truth. So what did those companions start doing? They started spending time at the other companions' homes, right? At the other VIP companions' homes and overstaying their welcome there. At that point, the Prophet ﷺ would go out to them and tell them, do not overstay your welcome when you are given food, when you are given drink, do not. If it had to do with the rights of other people, he was the most vocal. But if it had to do with the provocation to himself, right? Well, there was no self there to provoke. There was no nafs there to provoke. You see? And so this is one of the most beautiful testimonies of his character, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Can you imagine yanking the shirt from behind such that it rips from the front and it leaves these marks on your neck, and you turn around without a fist. You turn around and your fist isn't balled up like this. I mean, what refinement of his character. We're talking about character refined and rarefied to a superlative degree. What is it? What is the secret that allows a man to respond to such provocation without a balled fist? Without a balled fist. And that then it shows us then the essence of this deen. The very essence of this deen is to be able to transcend the provocation. And that doesn't mean that you allow yourselves to be taken advantage of, right? That also doesn't, there's a balance in that. That if a person is going to take advantage, right, then we have to set those boundaries. And the Prophet ﷺ did set boundaries. He did set boundaries, right? People knew what his boundaries were. And we can talk about that on the, we're actually going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Prophet ﷺ and how he divided his time, or we already talked about that? Huh? That's coming? Yeah, so the Prophet ﷺ did set boundaries. So we're not talking about allowing yourself to be taken advantage of, no. But when you are in control, the Prophet ﷺ said, لَيْسَ الشَّدِيدُ بِالسُّرْعَةِ وَإِنَّمَا الشَّدِيدُ مَنْ يَمْلِكُ نَفْسَهُ عِنْدَ الْغَضَبِ. That the strong person is not the one who can out-wrestle someone else with his muscles, right? But the strong person is the one who owns his nafs. يَمْلِكُ نَفْسَهُ. He owns his nafs when it is provoked to anger. He owns it, right? And he does not succumb to his anger. He does not fall victim to his own anger and then lash out and act in that fit. But he owns himself, especially at those points when he is provoked. And that then is connected to character. It's connected to character, because if we control this nafs when it is provoked to anger, the only thing that will come from us in place of that anger is what? Good character. That is the only thing that will fill that void, right? Because if I'm not going to respond to you with anger, I'm going to respond to you with something else. What is going to take the place of that? Except virtuous, noble character.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. MashaAllah, very complete, very well-rounded answer. This hadith is especially beautiful, MashaAllah, because as Sheikh Hisham mentioned, it is an expression of the character of the Prophet ﷺ. And one of the best definitions of character that I have ever heard in English is that character are those things about you that don't change according to circumstance. That is your character. So that if a person has generosity as a part of their character, it's the sara'i wa dara'i. They give in times of ease and they give in times of difficulty. If a person has hilm, forbearance, as a part of their character, they great if they're empowered, just like they would hope for forgiveness if they were in a disadvantaged position. And this is why one of the greatest, something that belies character is road rage. Road rage belies character. Because somebody going past in a car at 45 miles per hour, they may shout or mouth some obscenity, maybe they make a gesture, but the same person, if they were at the office or walking down the street or the local shopping center and they bumped into somebody, they wouldn't respond like that. You wouldn't mouth an obscenity, most people, right? You wouldn't do some kind of offensive gesture. You would immediately say, "Oh man, don't worry about it, man. I'll, it's cool, man. It's cool." Right? But when you do that, if you would respond differently in a car, going past your 45 miles per hour, what you're displaying at the office or the shopping center, that's not character. That's called expediency. That's called the avoidance of conflict. It might even be cowardice. What's amazing about this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ is that he is in an advantaged position. Sayyidina Umar is there. We don't hear that this rabbi, he does not have a retinue. He doesn't have an entourage. He doesn't have a posse. He's by himself. If the Prophet ﷺ wanted to allow Umar to deal with this man, he could have done that very easily. But the fact that even in an advantaged position, he responds with forbearance, you know that this is a part of his character. Another definition of character, مَا جُبِلَ عَلَيْهِ الْإِنسَانِ, that which is a part of the innate disposition of the human being. Those things that emanate from you so naturally that they don't require forethought. Things that just happen. And these are always indicative of our character. And this is where most of us struggle, because we don't have anfus that are mutma'inna. We have anfus that are lawama. Right? We're self-reproaching, which is the beginning. We do something, and then we think about what was done, and we are filled with remorse. I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. I should have responded differently. So we're working, as Sheikh Hisham was mentioning, and as he illustrated in his beautiful story. We're working. But when you arrive, and the Prophet ﷺ, the reason we narrate these ahadith is so that we can show what arriving, this is what wusul looks like. That when it happens spontaneously, with no forethought, and you're accosted, you immediately turn around and you are prepared to forgive. And not only forgive, but meet the person's illegitimate request. The debt is not even due. And he even chides Omar gently, the person that was ready to come to his defense. This is the Prophet ﷺ. And remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when describing the people of Ihsan, the Muhsinun, Allah gives two principal descriptions in Ali Imran. The first, كَاذِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ, they restrain their anger. كَاذِمِينَ الْغَيْظِ, they restrain their anger. Subhanallah. Now, not only do we fail to restrain our anger, we make a show of our anger. It's something that, subhanallah, it's very disappointing. But I have to balance my perspective. I mean, suffering and pain must be allowed to speak, but we have to speak truth to pain. But when they show Muslims in the Muslim world, they're at some demonstration, some rally, some political action, and everybody's angry, and their eyes are fiery, and they're burning effigies of Barack Obama and George Bush and Ariel Sharon and Benjamin Netanyahu and I'm thinking, we could have made our points more effectively with composure. We don't have to be angry and vociferous. We can make our points with composure. And in doing so, if our goal was to emulate the Prophet ﷺ, then Allah might give our efforts tawfiq. But when we turn around and we're angry, and they always have to capture one brother, who remembers the Newsweek cover? They were like Muslim rage. The guy, he has on his topi, he has spittle in the corners of his mouth. He's like this. And I said, what a bad picture. Muslim rage. Even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the people of Ihsan, كَاذِبِينَ الْغَيْظِ, they restrain their anger. And, speaking about character, to have patience and forbearance at the onset of adversity. إِنَّ الصَّبْرَ عِنْدَ الصَّدْمَةِ الْأُولَى. Patience is from the beginning of the adversity. You know, sometimes when you work in the community, you get called in to mediate domestic disputes and stuff like that. And you enter the home looks like a tornado hit the home. Things flipped over, holes in walls, the couches, the cushions of the couch are all over the living room. And you say, man, is everything okay? He looks and says, I'm just going to be patient about this. You want to be patient about it now? After you need to file a claim with your home insurance provider? No, الصبر إن الصبر عند الصدمة الأولى, at the onset of adversity. This is what we're striving for. This is what the Prophet ﷺ embodied. When Allah said to him, وَلَوْ كُنْتَ فَوْضًا غَلِيظَ الْقَلْبِ لَانفَضُّوا مِنْ حَوْلِكَ. صدق الله العظيم. If you were hard-hearted or coarse in your manner, even the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they would have fled from you. They would not have been able to endure your company. Harshness is always a repellent. No one is attracted to harshness. Ever. Ever. You know, as the old adage goes, you catch more bees with honey, or you catch more flies with honey, or what's the adage? You catch more bees with honey. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, his character was pure honey. And then we see at the end of the hadith, the man embraces Islam. He accepts Islam. He accepts the prophethood of Muhammad ﷺ, because he recognizes these elevated states of being, they can only be assumed by one who is in the prophetic office. They can only be realized by one that assumes the prophetic office. And forbearance is very, very difficult. In English, we describe forbearance as the ability to forgive from a position of advantage. A synonym for forbearance is magnanimity. A person that can forgive from a position of advantage. Meaning if I wanted to, I could respond aggressively, but no, even then you forgive. May Allah make us forgiving. وصدق رسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام.
We will be taking a short break now, inshallah, for a few minutes. If you'd like to get some water or restroom break, you have a few minutes now, inshallah, then we'll resume with the nasheed and move on to the final two ahadith, inshallah.
feel there's some darkness way out. These are words I've been looking at first year. They're still in there somewhere. So when I'm speaking, they can come out. I still got it. Yeah, I still like that. That was like freshman year. So I used to copy. My goal was to copy. Yes. How are you, doctor? How are you? How are your families? How please return my salam. So, because you're in Elizabeth, right? Madison. Okay, how's your practice? You were third year school.
Remember, I was the one that went to Malaysia.
Yes.
Came back and I was thinking, I was trying to
Figure out what your next move was. So what did you decide? Sounds like two paths of khair, this or that. Always good to see you guys. Spaces are supposed to address this problem. People that would have enough interest to attend Islamic inspired gathering, but still like the Masjid is still kind of like a danger zone. The Masjid is still kind of like, I don't really know if I would be comfortable there. And the thing with these programs is that they're supposed to take place like in cafes, take place at restaurants, places that are a little more like neutral ground.
Right, where like it was like, well, I'll be separate from you. I know when they're separate, I had that person.
And that's what I was gonna say. It's like so I think finding a place that they do some kind of Islamic program to go on neutral ground. I don't know what they have in New Jersey, but for some people, man, religious spaces are really scary places. You take for granted, oh, we're gonna go there, we're gonna pray, it's gonna be so nice. Some people really think like, dude, I'm scared. These are some crazy people. They believe there's some folks in the area that do different stuff. It's just, maybe finding something to take place like a person. Next time that someone's like and invite to like a college campus, invite them there because he'll feel like I'm much more comfortable. Like, oh yeah, you just want to make sure he's comfortable. And I think acknowledge it and accept it. I think is advisable. Just tell them, I really had a great time. I do understand your misgivings, some of your fears, anxieties about going to the Masjid. I don't think you would have run into any of those things at the session that I invited you to. But I get it. And next time I do something going on in a place that I'm more comfortable, I would just like to come along. Of course, but I think as long as you are understanding, everyone in the world, as long as you're like, I understand how these spaces are just that alone, the fact that you're religious and praying to that, you'll probably really appreciate it. Taught it. Actually, it's not even that. Kids are just like, my wife's just started a job with Tuesday. She's like, watch me. Anything. I don't see you. So I'd like to be there in person. I met that person on Friday and still I said I was trying to think about Sunday. So I need to actually finish I know you have dinner tonight. My family's also excited about it, in particular. But Shams, you're gonna be MC. I like that hat, man. Life is good. Life is good. It's a man hat. Life is good. My man Hamza Abdul-Malik was talking about how it's beautiful to say what's good instead of saying what's up. He said when you say what's good, you're taking it back, you're taking it back. Like it's already good. I just want to know what's good. It's already good. I'm not saying like what's up is good or bad. What's up is more neutral.
Sometimes you get surprised.
But if someone says everything's good, it's good.
رقت عيناي شوقا ولطيبة ذرفت عشقا فأتيت إلى حبيبي فاهدأ يا قلب ورفقا صل على محمد السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك اقرأ يا محمد السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا حبيبي يا نبي الله السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا حبيبي يا نبي الله يا رسول الله يا طيبة جئتك صافا لرسول الله محبا بالروضة سكنت روحي وجوار الهدي محمد يا طيبة جئتك صافا لرسول الله محبا بالروضة سكنت روحي وجوار الهدي محمد السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا حبيبي يا نبي الله السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا حبيبي يا نبي الله يا رسول الله يا نبي سلام عليك يا رسول سلام عليك يا حبيب سلام عليك صلوات الله عليك يا نبي سلام عليك يا رسول سلام عليك يا حبيب سلام عليك صلوات الله عليك أنت نور الله فجرا نلت بعد العسر يسرا ربنا أعلاك قدرا يا إمام الأنبياء يا حبيبي يا محمد يا نبي سلام عليك يا رسول سلام عليك يا حبيب سلام عليك صلوات الله عليك يا حبيبي يا محمد يا عروس الخافقين يا مؤيد يا مماجد يا إمام الأنبياء يا حبيبي يا محمد يا نبي سلام عليك يا رسول سلام عليك يا حبيب سلام عليك صلوات الله عليك So we wanted to give some time for some Q&A and discussion, but first, maybe Sheikh Hisham, you can open it up. You had wanted to engage the audience on some of the lessons today.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. How are you guys doing? How are you guys feeling, huh? I wanted to introduce a very special guest who's an unexpected guest among us today, but very honored nonetheless. If Kareem Salama could step up here, just stand up, Kareem. Just stand up and just wave to the audience. Kareem Salama, everyone. Kareem Salama.
I'm not getting
Okay, that didn't go very well. But inside joke. Okay. Moving right along. What we wanted to.
You guys know Kareem Salama?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. I've got, for anyone of you who. You guys know who Kareem Salama is? No. Okay, well that's done. It's done. It has never had a flying hope. Huh? Save me, Aisha, save me. So Bismillah, what we wanted to do in this session, we just wanted to give you guys a chance to offer your reflections, your thoughts, some of the challenges that you guys might be facing. We've been talking about character for the past 2 days. It's not the easiest thing to talk about, definitely not the easiest thing to work on, but also we would love to hear from you guys as well. What's hitting, what's missing, what are some of your struggles, right, that we can all benefit from, and maybe some certain obstacles that you were able to overcome, obstacles that you are still plowing through, right? We would love to hear from you guys as well. So we can have, I don't know how much time you have, maybe 15, 20 minutes or so, or 10 to 15 minutes. So we would love to just hand the mic over to you guys and just hear from you guys now. And instead of turning this back into a Q&A session, we'll have another Q&A session after, inshallah. So the floor is yours. Bismillah. Your reflections, your thoughts. No, but please don't all speak at once. It's very difficult to focus when you're all speaking over each other like that. I believe. Do we have any? Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go.
Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum. So, alhamdulillah, I think so a confession. When I first registered, my plan was to attend yesterday and perhaps half of today. But I found the sessions to be so beneficial, I had to stay the entire session. I think for me personally, I haven't had as much exposure to some of these ahadiths about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And you hear often that you develop that love for him the more you learn about him. So this has definitely piqued my interest to try to learn more. I think my personal struggle has, it's similar to the example you gave about the man who went back and crossed the road and shook the hand of the other individual. There was one of the hadiths up that spoke about helping a brother in need in a time of crisis. And I've been in both sides where I'm the one in crisis and I needed the help of somebody, and I've also been on the other side where I needed to help somebody in crisis. And I'm sort of still in that middle path where I'm struggling in terms of, you know, in the time of crisis, you're supposed to show patience and forbearance and things of that nature. I had one episode where it became such a stressful situation. You know, I started off showing patience and being forbearing and everything, but then it got to a point where it got so stressful. And before I knew it, I found myself saying, Ya Allah, why is this happening to me? You know? But alhamdulillah, I had family, I had good support. I was sort of able to calm down and come back to my regular self and understand that nothing happens without the decree of Allah. But in that moment, you know, I found myself saying those words. And it's something I still think about often, like, man, I shouldn't have said that. You know, I should have been able to be more patient, right? And then on the flip side, I've been in situations where maybe a brother needs help, and I eventually do help. But then at that initial moment, I'm like, oh man, I gotta do this now. I gotta drive all the way, So I'm still sort of in that middle area where it's not like just instinctive to just be the best you can be, and I think you spoke somewhat about it, but any other advice you can give to just get there, but I'm still in that middle area. That's what I struggle with personally. Jazakallah khair.
Just last night, somebody asked me to drive him to New York City on one Saturday where I'm going to be in New York. So I said, sure, right? And at your service, right? Whatever you want. And then, as the conversation went on, he said, well, you do know that that's a 3-hour drive, right? I said, oh. So just piggybacking on that. But, our word is our bond, you know what I'm saying? And the decree of Allah is what it is. And we got to get to a point where we just recognize that whatever happens is coming from Allah. And that's where my Lord wants me to be. He wants me to drive 6 hours that day. That's what He wants me to do, right? So, it's a struggle. It's a test. It's a test. But we don't want to hear from me. We want to hear from more of us.
I just wanted to say first, Jazakallah khair for having this event. I think it was very, very beneficial. Personally, I haven't had a chance to come to one of these in a long time. And more going along with one of your points, Sister Aisha, you mentioned that when you're surrounded by non-Muslims or other people that aren't as practicing, you might just become complacent. And I think a lot of it was outside my choice because I was just so busy. But currently I'm working in a hospital where I'm the only hijabi in the entire hospital. And so even if I wanted to have more Muslim people around me, there just aren't. But I think coming to a gathering like this is so important. One, to remember your community, but also I've gained so much just by being here in these 2 days. One thing, I guess, just a comment of something that I would like more of is the Q&As. I think just hearing about some of the concerns that the members of the communities have, even if each question is not elaborated on by all 3 people, I think just quickly running through them. I know a bunch of people had sent in questions yesterday too. I personally find them very beneficial along with the rest of the program. So just wanted to pitch that out there.
Thank you for that.
Any other reflections?
Hi, Assalamu alaikum. So I wanted to ask, in your opinion, in your experience, at what point is it not selfish to really not involve yourself in other people's problems? And even when it comes to someone close to you, and let's say, for example, that you're going through an emotional problem, but you know what the problem is, you've been through it with them, and it's more of they just have an issue with themselves, maybe an addiction, it could be emotional issue, a mental health problem. How do you keep yourself from getting emotionally involved in an issue without getting angry at them or getting angry with them trying to help resolve what they're going through? Or it could be logistics, the whole New York thing. I mean, I've driven to New York, I'm never gonna do it again. Don't. So yeah, I guess at one point, are you supposed to say all right, enough is enough. I can't put myself through this situation because I'm not going to go down with you.
A recognition of one's limits is also a part of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. That one knows when they have reached their limit. So that beautiful hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ told both Umar and Abu Bakr to give for the sake of Allah. And Umar gave half of all of his wealth for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he left half for his family. And this is something very admirable. This is something very commendable. But then Abu Bakr, he came and he had given all of his wealth for the sake of Allah. And when asked, what did you leave for your family? He responded, radiallahu anhu, I leave them Allah and His Messenger. Sayyidina Umar said, that day I gave up any chance of ever catching up to Abu Bakr in taqwa. The fact that he was able to say, he didn't say, oh man, I gotta give the whole thing. That's what, look, that's where I'm at. I'm not, Abu Bakr is there, and I'm here. So if someone says, you know, I need a ride to New York. Yeah, I can't. There are many people who will give you a ride to New York. You're just not talking to one of those people. Here's Hisham Mahmoud's car. Tell him you need a ride to New York. He might give you a ride. And in that, there's nothing, you know, when I said it was the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, it's a sunnah taqririyah. A beautiful hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He's sitting with Sayyidina Umar again. Sayyidina Umar, when you look at all of the hadith that feature Umar, you see honesty, sincerity, candor. And these are perhaps the means by which he was elevated. The Prophet ﷺ said to Umar, Ya Umar, la yu'minu ahadukum wa bayna al-qawsayn kamilan hatta akuna ahabba ilayhi min malihi wa abna'ihi wa zawjatihi wa nasi jami'an hatta nafsi. Ya Umar, none of you believes completely until I am more beloved to him or her than all of their wealth, than their children, than their spouse, than all of the people, and even their own self. Do you know that Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu looked at the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, I know that I love you more than any amount of money. And I love you more than I love my children, and I love you more than I love my spouse. But I don't love you more than I love myself. I was discussing this hadith with my wife, and she said, that means he loved himself more than he loved his wife. I said, babe, that's not the point of the hadith. That's not the point of this. Stay with me. Stay with me. Right? Stay with me. Yeah, she's penetrating her intellect. Sayyidina Umar told the Prophet, I don't love you more than I love myself. Do you know that the Prophet simply told him, Ya Umar, because your faith it has some deficiency in it, and left it like that. The fact that he was able to embrace, look, this is where I am. This is where I am. And then some people say weeks went by. Some people say days. Some people say months. Sayyidina Umar thought to himself, everything that I've learned about Allah, I've learned from the Prophet ﷺ. And if I inherit God's paradise, it will be by virtue of that knowledge. And if I'm able to avert the chastisement of hell, it will be by virtue of that knowledge. I do love the Prophet ﷺ more than I love myself. And he went back to the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, I love you more than I love myself. And he said, Al-Aman wasalt, Ya Umar, now you have arrived. My point is, first of all, to know that we have limitations, even in our religiousness, even in our level of practice. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging that you have limitations. When it comes to applying those limitations to how we can help other people, sometimes it's wise to do so. To recognize that, look, actually, I can't do anything for you besides what I've done for you. So at this point, I will pray for you. If you need me to make a call for you, I'll make a call for you. If there's something I can give you,
Materially, I'll give what I can, but I can't do any more than that. And then you have to trust that that brother or that sister will accept this as a statement of truth, honesty, integrity. I'm not saying this to put you down gently. I'm telling you really because I don't have anything else to give. I can't give you anything else. And we have to be very careful not to become enablers. Sometimes we're not helping people when we become enablers. You know, something very personal. And, you know, I mean, I have to give this further reflection in terms of how our religious teachings relate to this principle. But, you know, my father suffered with addiction when I was growing up. And my mother started attending a program called Al-Aman. She started attending Al-Aman. And one of the things they said was that in order for a person to see how addiction is destroying their life, you cannot be their enabler. So that if your partner gets so drunk or so high that they can't make it to work, you don't pick up the phone and make up a lie and say, he had a doctor's appointment and he won't be able to make it in today. Let him lose his job. Then maybe he'll say, I really need to do something about this drinking. And in that, you would be helping the person. If my father drank to excess and passed out in front of my building, I was not going to. My mother instructed me, you don't rush out there getting embarrassed. Oh my God. Check his vitals. Make sure he's alive. Step over him and go in the house. And it sounds harsh. But if this is what he wanted to do, and he's debasing himself in this way, I can't be more concerned about you than you are about yourself. So sometimes the love has to be tough. Sometimes the love has to be tough. So it's nothing to my mind. Maybe Sheikh Hisham will, offer further reflection, or Sheikh Aisha further reflection, telling someone that, look, I've done everything that I can do for you. I don't think that that's immoral in the slightest. I think sometimes that's the wisest thing that you can do. Look, I've done everything I can for you. And Allah knows best.
I told you.
No, it's okay, Lord, too.
There was something I just wanted to highlight what he said, and it also goes back to what you said. I think it's important to acknowledge when you're in a crisis or someone else is in a crisis, that emotional state, whatever it is, to check it. Like, meaning check in with it about what am I feeling about this? Because the state of your emotions inform you about the condition of your soul. And so being able to say, am I sincere in I've done everything I can for you, right? Or am I in a place where I just don't want to?
That's real.
Right? When I ask myself, when I have that feeling of, I check in. Why am I having that blow up? Is it because I am at emotional fatigue? Is it because I've gotten to a point we've done this 25 times and now we're at the limit? Or is it just simply, I don't want to? And I don't want to ask myself, why don't you want to, Aisha? I don't want to because I'm lazy. I don't want to because I don't like her. I don't want to because I'm angry at the situation, right? Or I don't want to because I don't want to be going through this. So to be honest about where you are emotionally, because if I'm able to say, because I don't want to, because I'm angry at the situation, because I'm lazy, or because I want to watch the game. Like the game is about to come on and I don't have 6 hours. Like I don't have much time for myself to kick up, cross my feet, and watch the game. And you're going to interfere with that. I'm saying that to say we have to be very clear about where is my nafs, where is my heart, where is my ego, where is it all about me, and when am I truly preferring someone over myself? And if I can't say this is about my nafs, I can push a little bit. This is about my ego. I'm just angry at the situation and I'm mad that you keep putting me in this place. Then that's something I need to check. Have I done everything that I could? Is there something further I could do? Is there truly a place where I could be of assistance and it wouldn't bring me down? Then offer that. And sometimes that does look like a referral. Sometimes it does look like, I'm not a mental health therapist. I'm not a drug counselor. But I'm willing to go with you. I'm willing to find out, make an appointment, and I'm willing to go with you and sit outside the door until you finish, and I'm willing to drive you back. Right? A lot of times we stop short of doing everything that we can just because of our own personal feelings about it, not sometimes recognizing how did that person get there. So that's one aspect. But once you get there, I am definitely like Sheikh Ubaidullah, once you know I have done everything in my power, in my ability, I have checked my emotions, my selfishness, my nafs, and my ego, and we have arrived at the place where I pass this baton on to you to handle, then you have every response. And part of helping that person is to let go and let God.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I also want to say that when questions like this are posed, I think these questions, if we are working through them, it indicates that we are living truly, spontaneously, and authentically. Because these are not questions that can be answered in any one-size-fits-all way. Every situation is different, as our Sheikh was saying. Maybe it's just about me and I need to push myself and give of myself just a little bit more. Maybe it's a situation where it's like, no, I cannot continue bailing you out of prison every time you get drunk and get into a fight at a bar, and you call me from jail. I mean, how many times do you expect this to go on? At some point, you have to take responsibility for your behavior. So it's you know, it's tough.
And don't spend your rent money bailing that person out. Don't get put out trying to, don't extend your hand too far in that situation. So it's, in each case, even there's some common sense. There's some logic in that.
You just gotta, every situation, one of my favorite hadith of the Prophet, I say this about every hadith, my favorite is that the Prophet كان رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يعلمنا صلاة الاستخارة كما يعلمنا سورة من القرآن. The Prophet ﷺ used to teach us istikhara like he would teach us a surah from the Quran. Dr. Jackson said to me, what does this tell you? That even the messenger of God ﷺ didn't have all the answers. Even the guidance that he was upon, that was like a mahajjatin baydah, like it was absolutely clear, did not obviate the need of asking God for help. I don't know what to do here. Allah, guide my choice, guide my decision. If we're not being put in situations like that, then we're not living authentically. Where it's like, I don't know what to do here. Right? I got a child, I got a friend, I got an associate. Should I continue helping? Should I refer this to someone else? Should I pull back? This is real life. And we just have to live it. May Allah give us tawfiq.
Don't beat up on yourself too bad. We all get in situations where we're like, y'all don't think. Sometimes you're just like, the
only dua you can say is Ya Allah, help. Right? And sometimes, sometimes you have the stamina to say, okay, alhamdulillah. Well, alhamdulillah li kulli hal. Alhamdulillah. And sometimes, you're like, oh, this is not that funny. This is serious. This is just, y'all don't help.
Yeah, no, I get put in situations like that often. Brother, same brother every month on the 29th or 30th of the month. Obey Allah. I did it again. I done went to the gambling boat. I lost the rent money again. You think you could talk to the Masjid about some sadaqah? I said, this is like the 9th consecutive month you've gambled your rent. Don't you think you need to seek help for your gambling addiction? I know, but at this point my kids gotta have a place to live. It's like, and each time I make the call to the Masjid, he's in a situation again. If we get him some rent money, he really appreciates it. At what point will I say, that's enough, we can't keep doing this, man?
We're gonna move your wife and kids. And we'll let you figure it
9,
out.
10 times. Now it's getting personal. I hope you don't see this video. 9, 10 times, 9 months in a row? Come on, man. At some point, man, we gotta say, come on, actually. We can't keep doing this, man. We never keep dancing this dance. We never keep doing this. Like they said in Chicago, I'm not about to go around the corner with you. I'm gonna stand on the street with you.
That's right.
I'm not even about to go around the corner with you, man. We ain't gonna keep doing that. We ain't gonna keep doing it. I'm sorry. I hope you don't see the video.
Don't worry, we don't know.
No, it's not you. It's not you. I'm looking at you. Stop gambling the money, man. Stop. No. You're done. Okay.
We're going to move on, inshallah, Jazakumullah khair, to Hadith 9. We do have a couple of other questions, but after we can go to Hadith 9 and then address that, inshallah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله قال من عادى لي وليا فقد آذنته بالحرب وما تقرب إلي عبدي بشيء أحب إلي مما افترضته عليه وما يزال عبدي يتقرب إلي بالنوافل حتى أحبه فإذا أحببته كنت سمعه الذي يسمع به وبصره الذي يبصر به ويده التي يبطش بها ورجله التي يمشي بها وإن سألني لأعطينه ولئن استعاذني لأعيذنه.
This is a hadith Qudsi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that I declare war against whoever is hostile to a friend of mine. My servant approaches me with no actions that are more beloved to me than what I have made obligatory upon him. And my servant keeps drawing nearer to me with voluntary works until I love him. And when I love him, I am his hearing with which he hears, his sight with which he sees, his hand with which he grabs, and his foot with which he walks. And if he asks me, I will surely give to him. And if he seeks my protection, I will surely protect him.
There are certain hadith that really get to the essence of this deen and leave nothing out. This is one such hadith. It's a hadith Qudsi in which the Prophet ﷺ is quoting his Lord. It's a sacred hadith in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking, right? But it is not part of the Quran, right? It's in the Prophet's own words, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in this gem of a hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam encapsulates the entire essence of our faith, right? It starts with a very in a very discomforting way, that whosoever seeks to harm one of my awliya, one of my protected servants, I shall wage war against that person. It is the only hadith out of the corpus of hundreds of thousands of hadith where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala threatens war against anyone. There's a verse in the Quran in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala threatens war, and his messenger threatened war, not against those who are fighting, not against those who are actually at war with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but against those who exact undue advantage economically from a person's circumstance, right? Given a person's circumstance. Now, this is the only hadith, however, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to my knowledge, and I've asked my teachers, to my knowledge, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala threatens war against anyone, and it's against those who seek to harm his awliya, his protected servants, right? And then he says, and then the rest of the hadith is a definition of who the wali is. It's a definition of who the wali is. That he says, he says, ما تقرب إلي عبدي وما تقرب إلي عبدي بشيء أحب إلي مما افترضته عليه. That my servant does not draw closer to me with anything more beloved to me than what I have obligated him to do, right? And the obligations are few. They're very few. We don't have very many obligations in this deen. And we don't have very many prohibitions in this deen. If we wrote in a notebook all the obligations that we have and all the prohibitions that we have, right? I guarantee you that there will be so much overlap, and it would be very difficult for us to actually fill more than 2 pages of that notebook. But then, that is not the heart of this hadith. The heart of this hadith is what comes next. وَمَا يَزَالُ عَبْدِي يَتَقَرَّبُ إِلَيَّ بِالنَّوَافِلِ حَتَّى أُحِبَّهُ. And my servant will continue to draw closer unto me through voluntary acts until I love him, right? Until I love him. So if you ask why were we created, we would say, لِنَعْبُدَ, right? In order to worship Allah. But when we say that, worship, what are you thinking about when I use that word? Worship. That I have not created the jinn or mankind except to worship me. What are you thinking about when I use that word? Salah, right? So Allah created us for salah. What do we do with the other 23 hours of our day? That's not part of our purpose of being here. Allah created us for salah. Is that why we're salah? That's one of the limitations of the word worship, right? In English, but because it's ritualized in English. In Arabic, it is not ritualized. In Arabic, if you take a slave, a'abd, you take a slave, and then convert that slave into a verb, that is the purpose of our creation. It's to render every single deed in service to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a good intention, right? That whatsoever we endeavor to do, if we wed it to a good intention, as we render our service to the servants of Allah and our worship to Allah Himself, then it is considered worship. That is why we were created. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says that the more voluntary acts we do, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't even obligate us to do, that will gain us what? The love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which tells us that the worship is not the goal, but it is the means to a higher goal, and that is the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when Allah loves you, what happens? فَإِذَا أَحْبَبْتُهُ, and when I love him, كُنْتُ سَمْعَهُ الَّذِي يَسْمَعُ بِهِ, I become the ears with which he hears. وَبَصَرُهُ الَّذِي يُبْصِرُ بِهِ, I become the eyes with which he sees. وَيَدَهُ الَّتِي يَبْطِشُ بِهَا, and I become the hand with which he toils and strikes and works. And I become وَرِجْلَهُ الَّتِي يَمْشِي بِهَا, I become the leg with which he walks. Allah becomes these faculties. What does that mean? What does that mean? That if you are in the presence of a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is the definition of the wali, if you are in the presence of a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then what he says reminds you of Allah, how he looks upon you reminds you of Allah, how if you observe him at work, if you observe him just walking, he reminds you of Allah. Everything about him reminds you of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah becomes these things for the person, which means that I adorn him. I adorn him with my names and my attributes. I adorn him with my names and my attributes. And so he infuses into this person every name and every attribute that is divine, such that when he acts by placing those attributes in their proper place. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala infuses all of us, all of our arwah, all of our souls with his names and attributes. I become these things, meaning that he uses the divine faculties that I have gifted him in their proper place. Because you can take rahmah, you can take compassion. If it's misplaced, the person will walk all over you. And you can take intiqam, revenge. And if it's misplaced, you will wreak havoc on earth. So all of these are divine faculties that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. We have divine capacities. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala breathed into Adam of his ruh, what does that mean? He means that means that you and Allah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has extended to you through his names and attributes a nature that is God-like. A nature that is God-like when these names and attributes fall right into place. And don't think that that's a stretch. Because Allah is Al-Rahman, do you not have the capacity for compassion? Allah is Al-Adl, do you not have the capacity for justice? Allah is Al-Alim, do you not have the capacity for knowledge? Allah is Al-Wadud, do you not have the capacity for affection? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Muntaqim, do you not have the capacity for revenge? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Malik, do you not have the capacity for kingship, for dominion over your nafs? For dominion over your nafs. Are you not the king of this kingdom? Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has extended to you from his names and attributes these godlike virtues that he has adorned his servants with. But the secret is not just in the beginning point is in the obligation, but the secret is in the voluntary acts. Because if you take that same notebook and turn a page and say, okay, give me all of the list of the things that are mustahab, and all of the things that are makruh, all the things that are beloved to Allah that he has not obligated, all the things that are encouraged, that are recommended, right, in our sharia, and all the things that are discouraged or reprehensible, right? Then how long is this going to be, and will there be any overlap? As long as we are asking, is it halal to do this? Is it haram to do that? That question reveals more about the questioner, right? It reveals more about the questioner than the question is actually seeking. Because basically what you are saying is, can I do it and get away with it? Can I do it and still be on the safe side? Is it haram? Meaning, can I do it and still not have to make tawbah for doing it? But when are we going to ask the question, is this mustahab or is this makruh? Is this beloved by my Lord? Is this discouraged by my Lord? And that's what the hadith is talking about. وَمَا يَزَالُ عَبْدِي يَتَقَرَّبُ إِلَيَّ بِالنَّوَافِلِ حَتَّى أُحِبَّهُ. That those voluntary acts that I have not obligated for him to do, that he will draw closer to me through those voluntary acts until I cast my love upon that person. And when I do so, then everything that person, his being, will remind everyone about me. His that I will speak through him. I will speak through his tongue. And I will and his eyes will see through my perspective. Behind veils, right? Veils will be lifted. And the Prophet ﷺ described a person like that, saying, اتَّقُوا فِرَاسَةَ الْمُؤْمِنِ فَإِنَّهُ يَنْظُرُ بِنُورِ اللَّهِ. Just beware of the inner sight of the believer, because he beholds with the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. الْبَصَرُ بِالْعَيْنِ كَالْبَصِيرَةِ لِلْقَلْبِ. That sight for the eye is like insight for the heart. That person will have veils removed from them, such that they see with the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They speak with the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They strike and they struggle and they toil with the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They walk with the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so what of their character then? What of their character? It is light upon light, upon light, upon light, upon light. And how is that? It is by drawing unto Allah through what He loves. And why? Why? Because if you truly love another person, you're not just going to concern yourself with the red lines. That these are red lines that I won't cross with this person. But other than that, I'm not really concerned. That's not how we treat those people we love. But if you know that your mother loves flowers spontaneously, without a national holiday to elicit that from you, if you know she loves flowers, you don't have to give her flowers, right? But if you know she loves flowers, and because you love her, whatever she loves is beloved then. That's the first principle of love, is that whatever the beloved loves is beloved. Then whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if Allah is your Habib, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is your beloved, then whatever Allah loves is beloved to you. So you're not concerned about the halal and haram anymore because that's easy. You don't want me to eat pork? That's easy. That's easy. I'm not concerned about, Shaitan has no hope in finding me in the haram. He's got no hope in finding me neglecting the wajib, that which is obligatory. But where our spirituality begins to flourish, where our morality deepens, where our character shines, is in the mustahab and the makruh. Is in pursuing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where he loves but has not obligated. And where he discourages and finds reprehensible and he has not prohibited. Do you see what I'm saying? That's where we thrive. And that is where our character becomes that much more devout. And some of the scholars, they even said, وَتَرْكَ الْكَثِيرِ مِنَ الْمُبَاحِ. And even that middle category where it's just neither here nor there, it's neither obligatory nor forbidden nor encouraged nor discouraged, it's just neutral, leaving off a lot of that too. Forsaking a lot of that too. And that's where we can really thrive in this, right? So we're talking about character development just on the spectrum of the Sharia here. That's where we need to take this. We need to take this on that road, right? Because at the end of that road is the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And once we reach that, since we're talking about wusul, then whatsoever you ask for, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives. Whatsoever you ask for, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives. You're transacting with Allah directly. And so if he asks me, I will surely grant him. And if he seeks my protection, I shall surely protect him. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulih al-kareem wa ba'd. MashaAllah, there's really not much to add to that explanation. This is one of those ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ that I am honestly a bit reticent to even talk about. Because I think once you get to the second part of the hadith, someone that has direct experiential knowledge of what is being referred to in the hadith is much more qualified to talk about what is in the hadith than someone who merely studied the hadith with a teacher. That being said, Tariq has requested that I speak, so I will offer my own very limited insights into this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and what I've learned from my teachers. First, I'll start though with a reflection. My daughter turned 13 this year. I am officially the father of a teenager. And boy, do I feel old. Sometimes she talks to me about her world and things that she's into, and I'm just like, I don't even know what you're talking about, man. Half of your conversation is acronyms, man. LOL, OMG, JK. I'm like, JK, just kidding. Oh, I'm just trying to keep up. But when she turned 13, my wife had an idea to give her a coming of age party. Like a rites of passage, because she's now mukallafa. She's praying, she's fasting. And the way we framed it was, this is the beginning of your intentional relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And thus, this is the beginning of the path to friendship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is not something we want you to see as a sentence, like a prison sentence. We want you to see this as the beginning of the only relationship, the urwatul wuthqa, that you know will always be there for you, that you can count on at all times and in all places. And it starts with the fara'id. It starts with the obligations. I can't tell you how many young Muslims I encounter, especially on college campuses, that say to me, Ubayd, I pray, but I just don't feel anything. And I said, well, we have to struggle to have istihdar, to have presence and khushu' and reverence in our prayer, but it begins with meeting your obligation. Tabiqatul dhimma. Just meeting your obligation. This is the beginning of attaining those states that you want. Even if for right now when you pray, it feels like isqat al-fard, just getting the obligation off of my back. The fact that you want to satisfy your obligation is the beginning. You know, once I was at the Masjid, and we were praying Salat al-Isha. And after the Salah, the Imam turned to the Jama'ah, the person leading the prayer turned to the congregation, and he said, did I pray 3 rak'ah, 3 units of prayer, or 4? And he prayed 4. But one brother said, no, you definitely prayed 4. Because I own 4 stores. And I think about the inventory of a different store in every rak'ah of the prayer. And I got through all of my stores, so you prayed 4 rak'ah. We were looking like, yo, you said that out loud? Like, for real? And this is somebody would come to the masjid, pray the salah in jama'ah every night. So he has a long way to go to realize prophetic states in his prayer. But he's meeting the obligation. I want to be there. I want to do what is at least outwardly required of me. And from there, that inward perfection of the act can develop. You will never get the inward perfection you're seeking if you're not doing the outward act. It starts with your obligation. And just the obligation alone is much more significant than I think we tend to realize. You know, one Christian colleague said to me, he said, you know, I really love the way Muslims pray. And I said, well, if you want, you can become a Muslim. You know, pray just like us. You know what I'm saying? I said, what is it that you love about it? He said, it's just so physical. Like you have to perform these ritual ablutions, and you have to find the direction of Mecca, and you have to take your forehead, and you have to press it on the ground. He said, all of this suggests to me that what you're stating in that moment is that if this is not true, nothing in my life is intelligible. If this isn't true, my life doesn't make any sense. So, from the perspective of someone who isn't Muslim, just the fara'id is more spiritual to him than almost anything in his religion. He's like, for us, prayer has become something that one can do on the toilet. This is a Christian speaking to me. This is not a broadside against Christianity. I wouldn't do that. The Prophet ﷺ didn't do that. I'm just quoting this man. He said prayer has become something that could really just be a fleeting thought. In the car, think about God. That is what we call prayer now. You're pressing your forehead on the ground, reciting from your scripture. That's amazing. And it is amazing. And that's why the performance of that prayer is the beginning of friendship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Fasting in the month of Ramadan. We think of it as, pretty commonplace. Until you talk to someone who isn't Muslim. They all ask the same question. Not even water? No water either? They say, no water either. And the fact that such a large percentage of Muslims actually do it, I'm inclined to see this as a miracle. Muslims across the spectrum in terms of religiosity, from very committed to mildly committed. In the Ramadan, I would say upwards of 70%, at least in my experience, 60 to 70% of Muslims are actually fasting in the month of Ramadan. Something that is a very ascetic practice. Our deen is all deen. And when one can commit to those fara'id with at least a level of commitment, dedication, seriousness, you're at the beginning. You have qualified for that intentional friendship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the most amazing things about his teaching to me is that he can issue guidance for everyone regardless of their level of spiritual ambition. So when the Bedouin man comes to the Prophet ﷺ and he says, tell me the salient aspects of Islam. Tell me just what is required of me. The Prophet gives him the 5 pillars, and the man says, I'm not doing any more than that, and I'm not doing any less than that. The Prophet ﷺ said, if you are truthful in what you say, you are a person of paradise. But for those who want more, the Prophet ﷺ must be there to exemplify what more looks like. So now we get into the nawafil, those non-obligatory actions. And as Sheikh Hisham was mentioning, non-obligatory acts are always signs of love. It's just like marriage. If a brother and sister are married and they're talking about rights, you know, one sister said, if my husband keeps talking about his rights, I'm going to give him some lefts to go with the rights. My rights. When one is merely satisfied with fulfilling rights, it says that the relationship, while functional, is a bit perfunctory, a bit mechanical, and devoid of emotional connection. I'm doing what I gotta do. I'm a husband. I do what I have to do. I'm a wife. I do what I have to do. But when you love someone, you do all sorts of things that you don't have to do. See, rights, think of them as like a skeleton. And without a skeleton, you couldn't stand up. But you have to put muscle and skin and clothes and all kinds of adornment on top of those bones. The fara'id, they provide the foundation, almost the exoskeleton of a morally responsible life. But if you want to, you can put everything on top of those bones. In doing so, you're expressing love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one of the characteristics of anyone that is kareem, that is generous, and your Lord is the most generous, is that they will never let you outdo them in love. They will never let you outdo them in love. So when you express love in your limited capacity, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expresses love for you in his unlimited capacity. And that is what this hadith is about. When you get to a point of expressing love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your limited, flawed human capacity, Allah reciprocates by expressing love for you in his unlimited, divine capacity. And then you have this apotheosis. You have this process in which the person becomes something that reminds people about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah give us that. May Allah give us that. وصدق رسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام.
This by far is one of my most favorite narrations of the Prophet ﷺ. Of course, because it being a hadith al-Qudsi, that this already by itself is an embodiment and a reflection of the love between the Prophet ﷺ and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That already in this conversation, these private conversations between Habibullah sallallahu wa sallam alayhi and his beloved, that these are their private conversations that are not for the public in terms of the fullness of it, like what is recorded in Quran. That the Hadith al-Qudsi is this intimacy between the Prophet ﷺ and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the Prophet ﷺ is telling us a piece of it. He's telling us a portion of it. But the fullness of this intimacy is not fully divulged, and what we're getting from it is almost just, for example, the lamp, the flame inside of the lamp, when the lamp begins to sweat, and you get just a drop of the dew off of it. That dew is, we may see it as beautiful, but it is nothing in comparison to the heat that is inside the lamp. And so this heat that's being, we're extracting some of this dew, but we're really not getting the heat of the love that's happening inside of this conversation between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Messenger of Allah. So much to the point that in the beginning, in love, there is passion, there is ghayra, there is, and in the beginning of this hadith, Allah is the one expressing it. Allah is saying, I will, because just as Sheikh Ubaidullah mentioned in the end, he's saying, in your human expression of love, in your limited capacity for expression for love, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is returning that love back with an unlimited amount. Also true in the beginning of this hadith, on the flip side of it, that in the beginning of the hadith, Allah says, I will wage war on the one who's hostile to a beloved of mine. He didn't say, if you wage war on one of mine, I will wage war on you. He said, if you're hostile, you get out of line, you be harsh, you speak ill to my beloved, you have no idea what I will release on you. That's al-Muhammad. That is al-Muntaqim. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the beginning of this is telling you, you don't love like I love. And so inside of that it gives me shivers. Because I can't imagine what a war with Allah looks like. And then Allah begins to talk about, gives us a small glimpse into how did we achieve this relationship of love. And so in the first one, when it says voluntary acts, there's something so slicing through our culture in this hadith, because what it's saying is that if you think that you're about to obtain any sort of spirituality without religiosity, you're a fool. That if you think spirituality is not gained except through deep submission, then you have missed the point and you have only gained nothing except temporary emotions. That involuntary acts, yes, there are some physical commitments. There are some physical, the 5 daily prayers, the fasting in the month of Ramadan, the giving of zakat, the giving of a portion of your life, the minutes, the time, the months, your intelligentsia, your academia, you give that up, right? The tangible evidence of that is your pay. You give that up for another person. Yes, for you to go on Hajj, to walk in the footsteps of the Anbiya and Hajar radiallahu ta'ala anha. Yes, that, but also what it means is that I have done everything for my eyes to not be in the place where it is haram. My ears, I'm done. I'm on the fog. I'm done with all of the haramat. I'm done with that which is forbidden for me. Not only am I in the act of submission from what I must do, but I have submitted my mind, my body, and my soul to the point that I have literally thrown back all that which is forbidden behind my back, and I have left that category of people. Then when you enter into the voluntary acts, that these voluntary acts are not just nawafil prayers. They're not just I passed by the sadaqah box and I dropped some in it. This is, I'm engaging, now that I've already engaged in the process of tazkiyatun nafs, the purification of my nafs. Now I'm involved in gaining the qualities of tasawwuf by embodying the characteristics of al-Mustafa. So by embodying the qualities of al-Mustafa, that this is such a high rank, such a high status, that initially what we're doing is we're just adorning ourselves with it. We're dressing up ourselves by it. We're dressing up our speech by it. We're dressing up our glances by it. We're dressing up our behavior by it. And so we are in the practice of it. But see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says, and they continue doing this until I love them, recognizing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only loves Allah does not love that which is inconsistent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves that which is consistent. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves that when Allah says, all the things that if we were to go through in the Quran, that Allah describes as that which He loves, these are someone who have reached that maqam and they are established in it. Right? They are established in that place. Like Shaykh Hisham, he mentioned that of course Allah al-Kareem. So Allah loves those who are generous, those who have karama. Right? Allah loves those who constantly come back to Him. At-Tawabin, Allah loves those, the people of Ihsan. So those who have now the heart to have to reflect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah loves that which is description of Him. Allah loves that which is description of Him. And so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I love this, it means that now this has been written for them. And when it's written for them, you're no longer, in the submission phase, you're working toward it. Right? In the voluntary phase, you're beautifying it. In the stage of mahabba between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are that. You are a siddiq or siddiqa. You are al-qanitat. You are, or the qaniteen. You are You are established in that rank and position. And that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves you. How do you get such a name like Khadija as-Siddiqa, at-Tahira? Because she is truly, she has embodied that purity inward and outwardly, but not because she's doing that, she's practicing tahara, because she is a tahira. She is that. This is why when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the descriptions of Maryam alayhi salam in the Quran, this is why she says, Yani Allah yarzuquni bi ghayri hisab. That if I ask, Allah will give me. And in this case, she didn't ask. Allah found her hungry. He will send down food from the heavens. He will manifest karamat, miracles on her hand. Why? Because she has that level of relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what it means to have muhabba between the servant and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That someone who is in this seemingly not in the ranks of the anbiya, like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the mother of Musa. وَأَوْحَيْنَاهَا, I give her ilham. I didn't send Jibreel. I didn't send a burning bush. I dealt with her directly. Because she's shahida, she's sadiqa. This is an established state of being. They're no longer practicing Islam. They're no longer practicing the Sunnah. They have embodied that. And those are my reflections of how that can be.
We had a question, actually, there were a couple of questions related to this. Jazakumullah khair, first of all. Before we move on to the final hadith, there was a question on whether there is a place for advice on the issue of modesty. Is there a place and a way to give advice to someone who may be on the verge of removing their hijab? This person was saying there's a trend within the community that's happening very often. Do we say anything, not say anything? How do we approach this? It's a sensitive, delicate topic.
I got an opinion about this. No, I don't. Yeah, I don't have any opinion about this.
You just had this verse prepared.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها النبي قل لأزواجك وبناتك ونساء المؤمنين يدنين عليهن من جلابيبهن ذلك أدنى أن يعرفن فلا يؤذين وكان الله غفورا رحيما.
That's a title for what, Shay?
You know, in this, let me translate for him. I'm gonna get some glasses.
O Prophet, tell your wives and your daughters and the women among the faithful to bring down over themselves part of their outer garments. That is more suitable that they will be known and not be abused. And ever is Allah forgiving and merciful.
I'm reading English and words too?
You know, in this about hijab, what's happened is that hijab has become like a colloquial term that we use, to describe like our khimar or, jalabiya. We just use the term hijab. It's like a short, it's just become a term that we use. And so many times what has begun to happen is that people start to say, well, hijab is not used. The term hijab isn't used in the Quran in that way. Right? When the term hijab is used in the Quran, it's talking about a barrier, it's talking about a partition, it's talking about, something that is between two people. And so they oftentimes use that to try to dismiss the wearing of hijab. And then, and a lot of that, let me say this, and a lot of that has begun to come up. We got a lot of YouTube videos, we had a whole movement, actually, of women, coming out, YouTube, TED Talks, coming out with seemingly very intelligent arguments against the wearing of hijab, right? Saying it's not, this was something that was cultural, it was something specific for a particular time, for a social class of women, it was, for this, that, to veil themselves from the bathroom, and the interesting thing about what Sheikh Hisham read, make that bigger, is what I love about this particular verse is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu qul lil azwajika wa banatika wa nisa'il mu'minina. What I love about this is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam to tell his wives, his daughters, and the believing women. For me personally, there is a almost like a cloak, like what happens when the Prophet ﷺ brings his cloak around Hassan and Hussein wa Fatima wa Ali. He says, this is Ahlul Bayt. Is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins to put a group of women inside of, he basically places a cloak, a veil around a group of women. And these group of women, first Allah is saying, O Prophet. So there is a sanad in this. Allah is telling the Prophet to tell his wives first, right? And his daughters. These are, Fatima Zahra, Zainab, Ruqayya, and the believing women. He then includes us in this group of blessed women, of Ummahat al-Mu'mineen. Right? Of the wives and daughters of the Prophet ﷺ, he includes the believing women inside of that veil. And he tells them to draw a veil or an outer garment over their clothes, over their bodies. And so the term here is jalabi bihinna, and I want to be really brief about this, inshallah, answering this question, because I know we don't have a lot of time. If I were to say a shirt, we would know that this shirt would cover a certain portion of my body, right? We wouldn't expect that shirt to cover my feet. We wouldn't expect that shirt to be on my head. We're expecting that if I say a shirt, you have an exact understanding of what portion of my body, what is going to be the function of that shirt, right? If I say sock, it's going to cover my feet, right? That's a certain portion of the body. So when we use the term jalabi bihinna, that this term actually has some things that it's going to cover. And the things that it's going to cover are not also include the area of the khimar. So the jalabi bihinna is literally a covering that goes from the head to from the top of the head, actually down to the feet area. Right? That this is what this is going to cover, which is why you see direct design or direct interpretation of that, you see women, especially like in Iran, you see them in Yemen, that their understanding of that is one big veil that covers that. Boom, cover. Because what they're trying to do is make sure that they have met what are the conditions of that particular term. Right? And so in meeting the conditions of that particular term, then what I'm recognizing is now I'm inside of that which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded. But here's the challenge. In other verses, there are verses that talk about draw your veil, draw your khimar over your bosom, and that was because culturally that Arab women used to wear a veil over their head, but it may be folded, it may be to the back, it may be hanging to the side, and so their bosom area would be out, right? That you would see their cleavage and things like that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this particular verse, I'm speaking to you women who basically your cleavage is out, your hair is a lesser issue than your bosom being out, right? So then Allah ta'ala is telling them, draw this veil over your bosom. But in both cases, he's not saying remove the veil and use it to cover your bosom. He's saying take this veil and cover your bosom. Or in the case in Surah Al-Ahzab, what Sheikh Hisham just read, that you're going to cover from head to toe, and there are some conditions in that. Now, for me personally, after just that beautiful introduction to the verse, where we're included, Allah is inviting us. He's inviting us into a certain company of believing women, into a certain place of believing women to be included with the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen. He says, this is what I want you to do. This is a part of your submission. But then he says something that for me is exciting, personally. He says, so that you may be known. So that you may be known. Meaning that a lot of times hijab and, culturally has been described as so that you would be kind of, I guess, more or less not known, or so that you would be shielded, or that you would be, people wouldn't. But subhanAllah, he's saying, so that you may be known. That's the first man. As what? Known as what, Ya Rasulullah? Known as what, Ya Allah? As believing women. That if you are looking for that to say, I want to be, that no matter what you think of me intellectually, before I open your mouth and you try to figure out if I'm from Sudan or Somalia, or I'm from Jacksonville, Florida, or I'm from Texas or Atlanta or Chicago, before you try to figure out what my ethnicity is and place some kind of value on that, before you place a value on my level of intelligence, before you try to figure me out, you have first got to deal with me as a believing woman. When you first look at me, you'll say, I don't know anything for certain about that woman except that I know she believes in God. And so we have to ask ourselves, in that responsibility of khilafah that Allah Ta'ala gave to every human being, and that responsibility of being the representative of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, part of being that representative, part of my crown, so that you know that I hold this position as Khalifa, this is the veil that I wear. So that I would be known as free and believing. Free how? Free beyond I'm free beyond someone else's definition of how I should be, free beyond someone's definition of how I've got to fit into certain fashion trends or certain hairstyles or certain, that your definition of freedom means that I must dress like this. My definition of free says this is how I dress. That when I serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, this is the mark of that, as stated by Allah and His Messenger. Now, known as free and believing. Now in that, what I learned is that in that verse about so that they may not be harmed or molested, that this is a call out to the brothers. So that when you see me from a distance, for example, there was one particular woman during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and she's in the marketplace, she bends over and there is a man who pins her abaya basically to the top of her scarf or top of her khimar, and when she stands up, she's exposed, she screams out. There's another Muslim man who sees her, basically knows this woman is from us, this woman is one of ours, runs to her aid. There is a fight that ensues. He falls down. Basically, by the time this altercation is finished, the entire Muslim army has surrounded the souk on the defense of one woman, which says there is a responsibility of Muslim men to, and there used to be, especially like especially in inner city portions of America, it would be known that if you saw Muslim women, you knew you don't mess with those women, because there will be some backlash if you mess with those women.
Consequences, repercussions.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and there was a feeling of that. There was a feeling of respect. Like, you don't mess with them, because if you mess with them, they got a whole brotherhood of brothers that might come from Philly, New York, Jersey, Chicago, Atlanta, Oakland. They might show up at your doorstep. So there was that sense of like, oh, we know those women. And those are some protected women, so you just go ahead and leave them alone. And so I call us to come back to that in many forms and ways, and that's just to my brothers. And to my sisters who are struggling with it, it is a challenge that that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent us as a known representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this deen. And that carries a lot of weight. It carries a lot of weight. Sometimes you feel like I'm carrying all the looks of Islamophobia right here on my head, that's all attention grabbing. And that is challenging. That is challenging, sometimes scary. Sometimes very scary for women to go out wearing hijab, especially in certain areas of America. Not feeling that they, if I may be attacked, or is there anyone to protect me, or I'm going to be harmed. And for that, as a community, we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. But in terms of your personal saying, is this something I'm going to uphold, I think we have to be very careful in this. A lot of times people are like, there are 5 pillars, and then, men are adding like, and the 6th pillar is hijab. Like, do I really have to, you know what I'm saying? Got this, and she has to wear hijab. They're putting the hijab on the level of salah. Like, if you don't make your prayer, if you don't wear hijab, are you Muslim? And I think, in all honesty, I'm not asking about how you're making your salah. So don't ask me about how I'm wearing this, what my struggles are. I'm not asking about your struggles and your deeds, so don't ask me about mine. But from a personal standpoint, hold fast. We want to be in this company in the akhirah. We want to be with the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, and the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing as the believing women. We want to be we want to be amongst those in that company. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us strength and tawfiq to be steadfast in this.
And brothers, I'm going to show you how men should deal with questions about hijab. Look very closely. Jazakallah.
So we have one final hadith. Since we're low on time, we also have to pray also, inshallah. This will have to be a very limited commentary. Inshallah, we will recite the hadith, and then Sheikh Ubaidullah can comment on it, inshallah.
But only after we turn on the air conditioning.
No, we'll see what the hadith is, and whoever wants to comment on it can comment on it.
I got mad respect for any woman in hijab, man. This is not easy. Can we turn on the AC, please? Mad respect.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن أبي بن كعب رضي الله عنه قال: قلت يا رسول الله إني أكثر الصلاة عليك فكم أجعل لك من صلاتي؟ فقال: ما شئت. قال: قلت الربع. قال: ما شئت، فإن زدت فهو خير لك. قلت النصف. قال: ما شئت، فإن زدت فهو خير لك. قال: قلت الثلثين. قال ما شئت فإن زدت فهو خير لك. قلت أجعل لك صلاتي كلها؟ قال إذا تدفع همك فيغفر لك ذنبك.
Ubay ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu said, O Messenger of Allah, I often pray for many blessings or salawats upon you as a habit. What portion of my dua should be for you? The Prophet ﷺ responded, as much as you like. Ubay said, what about a quarter of my prayers? The Prophet ﷺ responded, as you like, but if you increase, it will be better for you. Ubay then asked, well, what about 1/3 of my prayers? The Prophet ﷺ responded, as much as you like, but if you increase, it will be better for you. Ubay then asked, what about half of my prayers? The Prophet ﷺ responded, as much as you like, but if you increase it, it will be better for you. Ubay then asked, what about 2/3 of my prayers? The Prophet ﷺ responded, as much as you like, but if you increase it, it will be better for you. Finally, Ubay said, O Messenger of Allah, I will devote all of my dua for you. The Prophet ﷺ responded, in that case, you will be relieved from your worries and your sins will be forgiven.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It is my humble request that we can conclude with some commentary from each of the teachers, inshallah. I will be very short, and then hopefully Sheikh Aisha can offer something, and Sheikh Hisham can also maybe close us out. This hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, we must start an exploration of this hadith with the character of the Prophet ﷺ. Above many other things, he was the most unassuming of people. When you read the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, you get the sense that the thing that challenged him most about being summoned to prophethood was being forced to be visible. Qum fa'andir. Get up, get out there. He would have perhaps, if it weren't for his desire to do what Allah told him to do, he would have perhaps been content to be completely hidden. This was the innate character and disposition of the Prophet ﷺ. So when you read a hadith like this, or the hadith I quoted earlier about him telling Omar about how it's incumbent upon the complete believer to love him, this is not coming from conceit or arrogance or self-congratulation or self-aggrandizement. The Prophet ﷺ does not have that as any even slight aspect of his character. So when he's telling this man to increase in his prayer upon him, know that the Prophet ﷺ is only telling this man this for his good. It's not for me, so that you pray upon me more and more and look how important I am. Because if you need any reminder of the chivalry of the Prophet ﷺ, there's a course that's offered at some universities called Sexism in Language. And one of the things they point out is that the word chivalry, we only use it when men perform acts of self-sacrifice. But women can also be chivalrous. But when we say chivalry, it means something that men do. It's an act of self-sacrifice that a man performs. Why must chivalry always be there? So when we say the Prophet ﷺ is chivalrous, we're not talking about something limited to what men can do. We're talking about the state of a human being being more concerned about someone else than they are about themselves. The Prophet ﷺ was chivalrous to such an extent that we learn that on Yawm al-Qiyamah, when every soul will be concerned about its ultimate fate and destination, everyone, we will all be there. يوم يفر المرء من أخيه وأمه وأبيه وصاحبته وبنيه. The day that a man flees from his brother and his wife and his mother and his father and his children, everybody on Yawm al-Qiyamah, they will be saying what? Nafsi, 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 me, me, me. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam will be saying, ummati, 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 my community, my people, my nation. This is always the concern of the Prophet alaihi wasallam. We have to know that first. So the Prophet alaihi wasallam, he's not telling us this for him. He's telling us this for us. Now, the secret of praying upon the Prophet ﷺ, or praying for, when you say praying upon, it's like P-R-E-Y. Praying for the Prophet ﷺ, is that one of the ways to gain someone's love, somebody who is irresistible, is loving who or what they love. For example, if I was at the Masjid and I needed to go somewhere, and somebody parked their car blocking me in, and I was delayed, and I was really, really angry. When they got to the car, and they saw my anger, they started talking about my son, Najashi. وَلِلَّهِ مَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. We know Allah has no iyal. We all are the iyal of Allah, but He doesn't have any children. But I'm just giving you an example of how you get to someone's love by loving what they love. If I'm angry and it says, I'm really sorry about this, but I want to tell you, Najashi is growing beautifully. And we have him in Sunday school, and he's a very enjoyable child, and you can tell that he's being raised well. I'm going to say, well, you know, I guess it's not so bad that you blocked me in. You know, you like Najashi, huh? MashaAllah. Okay, Assalamu alaikum. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the beloved of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So much so that God Himself told the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam to say to us, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمْ. Say, if you love God, follow me. God will love you, and He will forgive you of your sins. When you express love for the Prophet ﷺ, you are making yourself a receptacle of divine love. Allah will love you. The Prophet ﷺ is only giving us this so that through loving Him, God is going to love us. And it's always like that. And also, at the end of the hadith, he tells the questioner, if you make all of your extra prayers, if you make all of your dua, all of your supplication, prayer upon me, this will suffice you. This should not surprise us. The Prophet ﷺ told us that if you make dua for any other believer by name, the angels make the same dua for you, and their dua is mustajab, it's responded to, it's answered by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When I was in Azhar, we used to do our exams, and whenever you got stuck, you just started making dua for other students. Oh Allah, make this easy for Hamza, make this easy for Yasser, make this easy for Jamal, make this easy for Usama, right? In the hope that what? The angels would make the same dua for you, and then you get that push that you need on your imtihanat. Somewhere I'd be able to just astakhriju those ma'lumat from the kutub, like, it's coming to me now. SubhanAllah. What then if you can set aside your justifiable personal concern and just decide to pray for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Do you think God is going to leave you in the lurch? Do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to neglect you? No, actually, Allah ta'ala is going to care for you, because in doing so, you're practicing chivalry. Thinking about the Prophet ﷺ more than I'm thinking of myself, even when it would be okay for me to think about myself. And you're only doing so out of love for the Prophet ﷺ, and you're following him in that. And the Prophet has promised us that in following him, we attain God's love. And I'll end this with one personal anecdote. You know, once I was headed back to Egypt, and I was flying Lufthansa, and I was delayed leaving home, and I had a number of mishaps. I was taking the train to O'Hare Airport. A number of mishaps to slow me down. My flight left at 5:30. I was still on the train at 4:45. This is an international flight. And my anxiety was through the roof. Now, this was a non-refundable ticket. I was living on a student stipend, which means if I don't make this flight, that's it. I'm missing a semester of school. That's it. I'm yelling to the train conductor, "Hey, come on, man! You can see there's nobody on the platform. Keep going, keep going." I'm pacing up and down the car. Allah, you better see her. An older black woman. When I think of her now, her face was saintly. She said to me, "Baby, I don't know what you think you're doing with all that. I don't know what you think you're doing with all that. You actually would feel better if you just prayed." I'm sitting there with my suitcase. I'm going. She said, "I don't know what you." I'm yelling, "Come on!" Every time the doors open, I put my hand on the train. "Let's go! Come on, man! I'm trying to get back to school." I don't know what you think you're doing with all that. If you pray, you feel a lot better. And I swear, when she said it, it hit me like lightning. I was like, she's right. I got up my sibha, and I just started singing salawat on the Prophet ﷺ. And I could feel myself, every time I said Muhammad, I was just becoming calmer and calmer, calmer and calmer, calmer and calmer. When we finally pulled into the airport, it was about 5 o'clock. And even when I got off the train, I wasn't like running, but I'm not gonna sit up there and lie and say I was walking. Like, it was like how like that. You know, it was like a little, I wasn't running, but I wasn't. The story would be great if I was just walking, like, Allahumma salli ala. It wasn't like that. I'm not that cool, you know what I'm saying? But I wasn't like, I was calm. I wasn't like, I was just like, kind of like, at a brisk pace. But I wasn't running frantically. I get to the gate. I get to the counter. She says, normally, an hour before the flight, we close the ticket counter. But I don't know why. I'm going to let you through. If you can make it down there, right? If you can make it down there, you won't be able to check any bags. I said, I'll leave these bags here. I'll have somebody come pick them up. But if you can make it down there, you'll make your flight. I got to the gate at like 5:25. When I got there, they said, "Mr. Evans, we've been waiting for you." Came right onto the flight. When I sat down, I just continued making salawat. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Made it back to school. Ever since that day, every time I feel anxiety, the only thing I resort to is salawat of the Prophet ﷺ. And it always relieves me. I'm not going to say everything always works out for me. Sometimes I have to deal with adversity just like everyone else. But I feel when I'm making salawat with the Prophet ﷺ that now I'm reinforced and I'm ready to deal with whatever comes my way. So I encourage and exhort you to send salawat on the Prophet ﷺ. This is the makhraj, this is the miftah. Right? This is the way out. This is the key. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us abundant in our prayer upon the Prophet ﷺ. I've gone over. I know I was going to be short, but I've gone over.
You actually covered my time. خلاص.
I would.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.
This is بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي. يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. In this beginning, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna Allah wa malaikatu yusallun ala nabi. That inside of this is actually the only act of ibadah that we will do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That in this act of ibadah, in sending salawat on the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, you're actually doing an action that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does. Of course, not according to His greatness and His majesty. But Allah says, Inna Allah, like verily, like Allah is saying, indeed, without a doubt, be certain about it, Allah and His angels send salawat on the Prophet. That begins for us to be able to recognize its fada'il, to be able to recognize its virtues, its value, its worth. Is that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His angels are sending salawat on the Prophet, then what about us? Then Allah gives a commandment and a call out. He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, oh you who believe. And in that moment of saying, oh you who believe, He's giving us, like He's testing us. Right? Are you amongst those? Are you amongst the believers? Are you amongst those who not only claim to believe in Allah, but you have a true trust in Allah? Right? Without doubt, without question. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. And then He says, if you are one of those believers and I'm talking to you, sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. That there is a commandment to send salawat on the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Now the Prophet ﷺ said, the most stingiest of you, the stingiest amongst you, are those that when my name is mentioned, you don't send salawat. That's the stingiest amongst you. So of course, we don't want to be just those who get in, those who just, I send salawat when His name is mentioned. We want to be amongst those who send salawat often. That I don't have to be called. Right? I don't need someone just to remind me. I'm in remembrance. And this is the highest dhikr. After La ilaha illallah. After La ilaha illallah, because inside of the dhikr of salawat on the Prophet ﷺ, there are two dhikrs. Allahumma, you have remembrance of Allah and remembrance of the Prophet ﷺ. And inshallah, I'll close with this reminder that we all know that the Prophet ﷺ said, whoever sends one salawat on me, I will send 10 salawat on them. Uzkuruni fa'azkurukum. Right? Allah says, if you remember me, I will remember you. So in remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, He said, I will remember you. And you remember my beloved. Right? So in sending that salawat, when you say Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad, if you're sending salawat on the Prophet, and Allah says, I will send 10 salawat on you, this is the answer to whatever it is you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for. The answer is in, the solution is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sending salam on you. Salamun qawlan min Rabbir Rahim. Whenever you're asking anxiety, payments for your rent, problems with your children, issues with your spouse, issues with your family, whatever it is, it's going to be encompassed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sending salam on you. It's going to be encompassed in that. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's salam is full and complete. So if you send salawat on the Prophet one, Allah will send 10 salawat on you. Better than any dua you could make. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad.
Tariq is in such a difficult position, right? He tries to be so fair with us, and, but alhamdulillah, he does. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His majestic book, Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allah and His angels invoke blessings upon the Prophet. The present tense is used. يصلون على النبي. And in another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كل يوم هو في شأن. Every moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is intimately engaged. And if every moment Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is intimately engaged, and He uses the present tense verb as invoking, as sending down blessings upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is constantly sending down blessings upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, constantly, and his angels. Salawat is something that we are not used to doing. Salawat is something that we have to sort of become educated into it, the importance of it, and the significance of it, and the legality of it even. Like, is it even legal? Is it okay is it permissible for me to engage in salawat on the Prophet ﷺ? Because I heard certain people do that, and those are the people who are labeled with such and such or such and such. So is that even permissible for me? Now, is that even permissible for me? Right? So this question is coming from a socio-political circumstance, right? That we have to call out for what it is. But this is the hadith from Sayyidina Ubay. Sayyidina Ubay is asking the Prophet ﷺ, look at this beautiful question from his companion. How much of my supplication should I turn into salawat on you? How much of my, like I'm asking, oh Allah, give me this, give me that, give me this, give me that. That's what the nafs does, right? Give me this, give me that. But how much of that should I actually reserve as salawat upon you? And the Prophet ﷺ basically takes him from what? From one fraction all the way to what? To the whole thing. Like all of what you ask for, if you convert that into salawat upon me, it will be better for you, and Allah will give you what you want and what you would have asked for without even asking for it. Right? It's so beautiful. And so the man turns all of his salawat to the Prophet ﷺ. Abu al-Mawahid al-Shadili had a dream once in which the Prophet ﷺ came to him in a dream. And he asked him, what is the meaning of the hadith of Ubay? Of this hadith that we just recited. He asked him, what does it really mean? What's the real essence of it? The Prophet ﷺ said to him in this dream that what it means is that you invoke blessings upon me, seeking to gift the reward of those blessings to me and having none of it come to yourself. Like with no ulterior motive. Like even that, like how much of my supplication, oh Allah, give me this, give me that, should I convert to salawat upon you? Once they're converted, the desire for having all that stuff, that desire leaves you. And so, oh Allah, give it all to the Prophet ﷺ. Give it all to the Prophet ﷺ. And once you do that, Allah will then give you everything you would have asked for. Right? And so the Prophet ﷺ told him in this dream what it means is that you intend that the reward of it and the gift of it is all from me. Right? Is all from me. Now why is that? Because Allah Himself says, "An-Nabiyyu awla bil mu'minina min anfusihim." The Prophet is more entitled to the faithful than they are to their very own souls. That's a verse in the book of Allah. That is not some hadith that you and I can sit down and talk about, oh, who narrated that, and is he really, how sharp is his memory, what book was it related in, and no, that's in the book of Allah. The Prophet is more entitled to the faithful than they are to their very own souls. So if that is the case, then he is more entitled to our prayers than we are to them, right? Now that doesn't mean if you have a need, don't ask of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what it does, it opens up for us, and this is very insightful on the part of Sidi Tariq. It's very insightful for him to end on this, this intensive on the character of the Prophet ﷺ, to end on this hadith is so wise. Because what this hadith does is it encourages us to enter into a relationship with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ that will bring his companionship into our lives. The salawat on the Prophet ﷺ opens an aperture into the intimacy with him ﷺ, such that he accompanies you as you tread the path of your own life. And so you don't walk alone anymore if you have salawat on your tongue. The Masjid of Allah ﷺ said, do not turn your homes into graveyards. Do not turn your homes into graveyards, but invoke blessings upon you. And so if our homes could be converted into graveyards, then what does that say about a heart that is bereft of the salawat of the Prophet ﷺ? What does that say about our hearts? If our hearts are not moistened, if our hearts are not softened, if our hearts are not refined by the salawat on the Prophet ﷺ, if the home can become a graveyard, then what about the heart? The heart will die like the entombed in that graveyard. The heart will die. Salawat is what brings life to this heart. Because what it does is that the next time you walk into your house, if you're saying, Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi, and you enter the house, what do you do now? What do you do? How do you enter that house? Well, you enter with the right foot. Yeah, you enter with the right foot. And there's nothing outward about that sunnah. This whole Cartesian approach to sunnah, the structuralist approach to sunnah, where you have the outward and the inward, it's all inward. There is no outward sunnah and inward sunnah. If your heart is attached to the Messenger of Allah, the only reality that you are experiencing is inward reality. And it's intimacy with Him, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. So when you enter in with your right foot, yes, and this is an inward reality, entering into the house with your right foot, what makes it inward is because you brought the Prophet himself into the house, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He's now in the house with you. And if things are in disarray, well, the Prophet right there, he's standing right there. وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ فِيكُمْ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. And know that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is fikum. Know that he is fikum. That's a verse in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well. That is not some verse in a poem. That's not a verse that we recite in a poem. That's not Ahmed Shawqi, the Prince of the Poets, and in Nahj al-Burda. That's not what people sit around and sing about. That's a verse in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that will stand until the end of time. Until time itself dies, that verse will live. And it's part of the eternal speech of Allah, that know that the Messenger of Allah is among you. And English is limited in this way because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَعَلَمُوا أَنَّ فِيكُمْ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. And know that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is in you. He's in you. Do we not say that he was the mirror of the soul itself? Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So these salawat that we recite, these salawat that we recite, this is our door of intimacy with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And when you have that companionship with the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, then all of that is going to flood through your character. It will flood through your character if you have his companion. You are one of the Sahaba with that salawat. With the salawat, you become a Sahabi of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You have his suhbah. You have his companionship, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so Sidi Abdul Aziz al-Dabbal, he mentions this tradition in which he says, Inna Allah wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi. And before I go into what he said, one of the meanings of that is that the salawat of Allah on the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is rahmah. It's rahmah, it's compassion descending upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The salawat of the angels upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is maghfirah. It is forgiveness. It is asking for forgiveness. But also what they said is that the salawat of the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is his constantly praising the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to the angels. And the salawat of the angels is their constant petitioning of Allah to continue his praises of him. Like Sayyidina Hassan ibn Thabit said, وَشَقَّ لَهُ مِنْ اسْمِهِ وَشَقَّ لَهُ اسْمًا مِنْ اسْمِهِ فَذُو الْعَرْشِ مَحْمُودٌ وَهَذَا مُحَمَّدٌ. He said, and he derived for him a name from one of his names, such that the possessor of the throne is Mahmud, he is praised. وَهَذَا Muhammad, and this one is eminently so. He is eminently praised. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one of Allah's names is Mahmud, is that he is Mahmudun fi samawati wal ard. He is praised in the heavens and the earth. That's one of his names, is Mahmud. But Muhammad is eminently praised. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took praise And he divided it between himself and his prophet. And then the sign of love, true love, is that the lover envelops his beloved with praise. And so he gave him the name Muhammad, although he took for himself the name Mahmud. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Sidi Abdul Aziz al-Dabbagh says that the angels are on the peripheries of paradise. And they are constantly invoking salawat on the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And with every prayer that they invoke on his blessed name, paradise expands. Why does it expand? Ahmed ibn Mubarak asked him, and this is one of his students, he said, why does it expand so? He said, it expands, just imagine a father bereft of his son. Every time the mention of his son's name is in his presence, right? His heart enlivens, and he feels an expansion in his heart, longing to be with his son, so that whenever the angels are mentioning the name of the Prophet ﷺ, paradise expands, longing to be with the Prophet ﷺ. And just like the Father, his light emanates from the light of his son, the light of paradise emanates from the light of the Prophet's soul, ﷺ, such that paradise had its own will, had its will been fulfilled, it would have followed the Prophet ﷺ into this realm just to be with him, had it not been for the prevention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah prevented that from happening. But what he did then is he allowed paradise to enter and penetrate into the hearts of his servants at the mere mention of the name of his beloved sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.
MashaAllah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I just want to say a really, really brief word, very brief. I know that we are past the time of Salat al-Asr, for the Jama'ah, for the Masjid, and the congregational prayer in the Masjid. So we want to be very, very brief. But during the break, a sister came up to me and she was telling me about a friend of hers that feels some aversion to religious spaces and how she wishes that that friend could experience a space like this. That experience is very common for people who attend Celebrate Mercy programs. That if Deen looked like this more, some of those people that have fear or anxiety or discomfort about being in spaces where Deen is being taught would be more comfortable. This work that Celebrate Mercy is doing is about making the Prophet ﷺ accessible to people. In its visual, you see the great intentionality and beauty that has been put into everything here. It's based on etiquette. We're trying to make people comfortable. And then only secondarily, or perhaps the culmination of all of those efforts, is in education. And then you saw the campaigns, the initiatives. It's also action. So I'm just urging you to help us to bring this program in particular and programs like this to other cities, other masajid, other locales, inshallah. Please find a way to support the work of Celebrate Mercy. I am a very proud person, and I do not like asking anybody for money. This is one of the only causes that I don't mind telling people, give something for this. I'm not asking you to really give anything. I'm asking you to invest in your own akhirah, in your own relationship with Allah and your own relationship with His Messenger. So please remember, Celebrate Mercy in your donation. Please, Sheikh Aisha, I said you are the chief dua maker of the Western Hemisphere, inshallah. And I know how you can throw down, but in the sense that we trying to get to Salat al-Asr, can you please, conclude us with dua, inshallah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم يا أول الأولين يا آخر الآخرين يا ذو القوة المتين يا الراحم المساكين يا أرحم الراحمين. Ya Rabbi, I ask you by your infinite mercy that you expand our hearts and our understanding, that you fill it with love for you, increase us in knowledge and in wisdom. Ya Rabbi, we ask by your infinite mercy that you bless us to leave this gathering with a pardon of all of our sins, past, present, and the future. Ya Rabbi, we ask that you grant a mercy from you, Ya Rabbi, by which we would never suffer in the akhirah. Ya Rabbi, we ask that you please envelop us in your kindness and your mercy and your generosity. Ya Rabbi, please elevate our ranks. Bless us and our entire progeny to be amongst those who enter into Jannatul Firdaus al-Ala by the hand of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam wa Fatima Zahra. Ya Rabbi, we ask that you please take care of all of our affairs, every single one of our affairs, Ya Rabbi, and please mold and shape us into servants with whom you're well pleased and to have a beloved relationship with you, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Amin. Surah Fatiha.
Jazakumullah khair. Let's give a round of applause to our teachers and to our brother Muaz, who has graced us here with beautiful nasheeds, and also to all the volunteers who helped put this together. Please give them a round of applause and keep them in your dua, inshallah. We will continue informing you about future programs, inshallah. We thank you all for coming. Keep us in your dua, and all those who worked so hard for these events. Keep everyone who contributed in any way to this program, keep them in your dua, inshallah. And inshallah, we will pray Asr now. Assalamu alaikum. So, Allahu Akbar.
سمع الله لمن حمده.
الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
الله أكبر.
الله أكبر.
سمع الله لمن حمده.
الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
الله أكبر.
الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
سمع الله لمن حمده.
الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
سمع الله لمن حمده.
الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
So, and he was planning to come here alone. So, look, but then, whatever decision you may try to shoot. But yeah, I'll Yes, thank you.